So hey everybody, and welcome to this special on the annual, also known as the Ring of Fire solar eclipse that happens in the 5th degree of Aquarius. And remember, I use Vedic constellational astrology, but I do believe in Western. It's still in Aquarius, but just later on in Aquarius. So yeah, I'm Imani, your holistic karmic astrological life coach, and I'm going to take you on this journey. So yeah, the new moon solar eclipse is happening on the 17th of February at 3:36 a.m. exact. I'm gonna go into all of the key timings and all that good stuff as we go on, but I'm just gonna give you the summary. So the eclipse is exact at 12:12 p.m. GMT time. The moon enters Aquarius. That's what I was meant to say at 3:36 a.m. but you know. And the eclipse is exact at 12:12 p.m. So just 12 minutes past midday. It happens in the Nakshatra of the Nisa, Pada 4, which rules the 3.20 to 6:40 of Aquarius. I'm going to tell you what all this means. Just getting all the, logistics, astrological info out the way. And the Sabian symbol, the 5th degree, is a council of ancestors. So again, I'm going to tell you what all that means. So at the time of the new moon solar eclipse, the moon and the sun make a trine to Hygiena. The moon and the sun also makes a sextile square to Jupiter. The moon and the sun also makes a semisextile to Saturn and square Uranus and semisextile Neptune, trine the ascendant and conjunct the midheaven. And there's also three-point stelliums between the moon, sun and Pallas, the moon, Venus and Pallas, and Venus, Pallas and the moon's north node. So the moon, sun and Pallas stellium brings warrior wisdom and breakthrough. The moon, Venus, Pallas stellium brings the energy of love, meeting strategy, and Venus, Pallas and the moon's north node meeting up in the stelliums, bringing us activating forces on our destiny, our life direction, and wants us to become more wise in the ways that we relate to ourselves and others. So for all of you that likes things in a nutshell, this Ring of Fire eclipse demands that we break the generational dysfunction and toxic habits. And as I said, the Sabian degrees in, the Council of Ancestors, and the ancestors themselves are cheering us on. The Council of the Dead, of our past relatives, of our past lives, wants us more free. And sometimes they want us to be more free than we do, because sometimes, we're stuck in the loop of our toxic ways of relating to ourselves and others, addictions and relationships. And this is not about shaming or blaming. This is all about calling out our issues and working through them. This is why I do these specials and stuff. So yeah. Okay, so now I'm just going to talk about this eclipse phase in more focus. So ultimately, this solar eclipse emphasizes on us manifesting through the fire, through the pain, through the trauma, through the crap that's going on in our world. There's too much to mention right now, right? So this is a solar eclipse, yeah? So new moon energy, which means new beginnings, soul contracts activating, and manifestation becomes intensified. But this is not wishful thinking manifestation. This is manifestation through practical action, right? Making practice tool changes to our mind, thought patterns, our daily routines, the way we communicate to ourselves and others, right? And the sun and the moon meet in the dark, planting seeds for the next 6 months. But as I said, this isn't just any solar eclipse, it's an annular Ring of Fire eclipse, where the moon doesn't fully cover the moon. There's a ring of fire visibly around the edges. That ring, well, that's what you can't eclipse on the astrological, spiritual, metaphorical level. That's what the ring of fire represents. So it's wanting us not to let go of our authentic self, burning around the edges of whatever's been blocking us from being our true self, right? The part that refuses to die. And the sun and the moon both sit at the 5th degree of Aquarius. in the Nakshatra of the Nisa Pada 4, and this intensifies our rhythm, synchronicity, through transformation, timing, tested by fire. Basically, that's what that means. Like the Bear's Kami, the TV show, right? Maintaining his standards whilst everything's burning down around him. And as I said, the world's kind of crazy right now. So it's about finding a way to stay centered in ourselves. You know, the moment where you carefully control rhythm collapses and you either find a deeper beat or you break, right? This is what this solar annular ring of fire eclipse in Aquarius is all about. The eclipse is that walk in the fridge moment, you know, that waking up moment, the panic attack that forces the breakthrough. Your nervous system can't sustain the performance anymore. Something's got to give, and it can't be your authentic self, right? Okay, so Aquarius is the sign of I know, becoming. We innovate, you know, we change things. It's Uranus ruled, co-ruled by Saturn in some systems as well. So it brings sudden changes, revolutionary breakthroughs, lightning bolts that shatter old ideas. So new frequencies can broadcast, basically, you know. So Uranus is the thing that often jumps us out of our comfort zone, right? It's fixed air energy. It has stubborn mental patterns, logical patterns, pretending to be revolutionary at times, whilst repeating the same rebellion that maybe our parents performed, right? So, you know, your dad's rock and roll phase becomes your punk phase, becomes your kids' TikTok activism, different aesthetics, right? Same pattern. The shadow here is thinking you're unique whilst performing inherited rebellion, right? And the eclipse asks us what revolution is actually yours, not your family version of resistance, you know, not your generation's aesthetic of change, your revolution from your soul, from your life. Because sometimes we can get caught up in social media trends, follow the trends, you know, TikTok dances, whatever, activism, and then once the trend of that activism being upset about, I don't know, someone who's going to be cancelled, whatever, then we change, right? So it's asking us to actually question our values, right? Okay, so this new moon solar eclipse, it's not conjunct the North Node, but the North Node is kind of 10 degrees away, so it has that kind of influence, right? So I'm just going to talk a bit more about this North Node sort of conjunction, even though it's just kind of out of orb. So ultimately, you know, this eclipse emphasizes what we're going into, not what we're releasing, but what we're going into, right? That means it feels future orientated, but deeply uncomfortable. You're being pushed toward what you're becoming before you feel ready. You know, and as I said, we love our comfort zones as humans, right? So the discomfort isn't failure, it's proper, you know, growth pains, growing pains. Your nervous system saying this is new, this is unknown, danger maybe. Whilst the soul says, finally, trust the soul, the nervous system will catch up. So, you know, for some of you, your kind of like intuition and mind may be ahead of what your body physically can handle right now. Be gentle with the body, be gentle with your mind, because some of you, it's your intuition, spiritual kind of vision that's ahead of your intellect, your logics that say, no, I don't want to change, we'll die, you know, comfort zone, you know, I need my comfort zone. So, you know, this is reminding us, you know, to go in the direction of your destiny. So over the next 6 months, maybe you'll notice ancestral patterns surfacing, coming up that you swore you never repeat, or maybe you've noticed this in your life over the years and, you know, you dislike yourself for it. Maybe in the next 6 months anyway, you'll catch yourself mid-pattern, maybe like a hand raise like your mother's, a voice sharpening like your father's, that familiar tightness in your chest that your grandmother never named. And, you know, during that moment of recognition of whatever pattern you know, have found yourself repeating from your parents or primary caregivers or someone else that you swore that you never will, you know, sort of like, and repeat. Whenever that comes up over the next 6 months, that's the eclipse working, right? And remember, there's nothing to be ashamed of, because awareness is the breakthrough. Not the immediate behavior change, but being aware of it. And the eclipse window 3 days before, so the 14th to the 20th of February, so 3 days before and 3 days after, is when the lightning can strike, and the integration is the 6-month game, taking us up until the next solar eclipse that's going to happen, like August or September. Okay, so now I'm going to go more into the cosmic dance, the astrological mechanics, what's actually happening up there in the sky. So we're going to get proper basic for a minute. Our annual solar eclipse happens when the moon passes between the earth and the sun, but the moon's a bit too far away to completely cover the sun's face. So instead of total darkness, you get this ring of fire. The sun's edge burning around the moon's silhouette, right? It's like putting your thumb over a torch. You block most of the light, but the brightness bleeds around the edges. That ring is what refuses to be eclipsed, refuses to be hidden, right? So the exact alignment of the solar eclipse happens at 12:12 GMT time on the 17th of February. And the moon goes into Aquarius at 3:36 a.m. So, good 8.5 hours before there's that time. So by the eclipse time, the moon settled into the sign's frequency, and the sun and the moon meet at exact 5-degree Aquarius. And that's not random, because that's the degree of the ancestral council, right? The Sabian symbol that literally says a council of ancestors is seen instigating, activating the efforts of the younger leader. So our ancestors, or wise old spiritual guides, whatever you want to call them, directing the energy of, us living on earth, right? And ultimately it's, if you want to call it the dead or those without body, backing those in body, the living, right? The elders enabling the revolution that they couldn't complete. And for some of you, it's, taking on the revolution in your own way. So I'm just going to talk a bit more about the sun's energy. So this is authority meeting revolution. So the sun represents our conscious awareness, our ego, our identity, our sense of I am. In Aquarius, the sun says, I am different, I am innovative, I am the future. But at the 5th degree of Aquarius specifically, the sun says, I am because they were. My revolution stands on their shoulders. My freedom required their sacrifice. So the moon and the sun has the same Sabian degree because it's a solar eclipse, and both luminaries channel the ancestral council. The elders are backing the revolution, and our conscious identity, represented by the sun, and the emotional body, represented by the moon, are unified to come together in receiving this ancestral guidance. And the sun in the Nisha Pada 4 brings Mars, Scorpio intensity, because there are the Navamsa ruler to the Aquarian innovation. So this isn't gentle change, this is rhythm proven through fire, timing that survives transformation. Our sun, our identity, is being tested by intensity to see if you hold, if you can come into your own, if you can allow yourself to be authentic. And I know it can be hard because the world tells us that we have to be this or that, but ultimately the solar eclipse is telling us, is our innovation, our change just a trend? Like I said, the TikTok trend, the social media trend, is it real, or is your change a performance? It's asking us if our revolution has roots, or is it just ascetic rebellion? So now I'm just going to talk a bit more about the moon's energy. So the moon represents our subconscious, emotional patterns, our needs, our sense of safety and home. And in Aquarius, the moon says, I feel safe when I'm free, when I'm unique, when I belong to the collective without losing myself. But at the 5th degree of Aquarius, The moon says I feel the ancestors in my body, their unfinished business, or I feel my own higher self, my past lives in my body, my unfinished business, right? Maybe you're carrying their unlived dreams or your unlived dreams, and you find yourself thinking, I'm carrying what they couldn't complete or what I didn't complete and need to complete. So as I said, the sun and the moon have the same Sabian degree, reminding us that the dead are still active and we're getting guidance from the past. And our emotional body, the moon, is literally channeling, tapped into the ancestral guidance and wisdom right now. So, you may be feeling feelings that seem irrational, maybe because they're not yours, maybe because they could be 3 generations deep. That anxiety about being seen, that can be your grandmother's, that rage at authority, that could be your great grandfather's, from the factory, from the war, from the systematic grinding that he endured, or, maybe it's you endured those things in your past lives, right? And the moon in the Denisa part of 4 means your emotional rhythm is being tested by fire, and the feelings can be intense, the needs are deep, but this isn't, as I said earlier in the intro, about surface level new moon manifestation. This is my entire emotional operation system is being upgraded, or I need to upgrade it through practical changes in my day-to-day habits and thoughts and ways of relating to myself and others, right? And it can be knackering, right? Exhausting, leading to burnout. So make sure you do healthy self-care, take rest and chill out in, the ways that are helpful to you. For some of you, it's screaming. For some of you, dancing, listening to heavy metal. Some of you, it's listening to classical. Some of you, it's gaming. Whatever it is, find time to, chill out during this intense solar eclipse energy. So the sun and the moon being together at the 5th degree of Aquarius create this paradox: break free, represented by Aquarius, with ancestral support, the Sabian symbol, the Council of Elders, revolutionary change, ruled by Uranus, and backed by tradition, ancestral wisdom. So the new requires the old blessing. The young leader needs the council help. So also it's a reminder, sometimes we can, have fallout. Let's use our parents, not like our parents, like I don't want to be nothing like them, I'm never going to do anything like them. And typically when we say things like that, we end up like them. But it's also reminding us that sometimes it's not what people do. No, it's not what people say is wrong, it's the execution. So it's reminding us not to throw the baby out with the bathwater, not just to throw out good ideas just because we dislike the people that said the ideas, right? So it's like the secessions, the so right, Kendall finally getting approval, except the approval comes after death through what's left behind. Or the mayor of Easttown solving the case by finally facing what her son's death meant. Spoiler alert, sorry if you haven't watched it, but yeah. And the breakthrough happens when you start fighting the inheritance and start working with it. So start fighting the past and work with it. The ancestors, the past is not your enemy, they're your foundation. It may be a crap, you may think, well, I don't want that foundation. Well, not to be sharp, it is what it is. We cannot change the past, but we can change the future, right? And it reminds us, this solar eclipse, that you may not like the foundation, but you are allowed to build something different from that foundation. You don't have to make it control your life. You don't need to let the path rule your life. So think of a river that's flowed one narrow channel for generations. That's your family pattern, right? Tight, controlled, this is how we do things. Then the river reaches the ocean and suddenly it's not one channel anymore. It's dozens, hundreds, spreading wide, finding new paths, creating a delta, right? That's this eclipse. The narrow inherited channel, generational dysfunction, meeting the ocean, the world, the spiritual, the logical, that's Aquarius innovation, and suddenly there's space to flow in ways that your lineage, your family never could. The river doesn't reject where it comes from, it uses that momentum, that progress to spread wider. Then the single channel ever allowed. So again, it's reminding us not to let the past, or supporting us in doing the work or continuing the work or starting the work of doing so, right? Because it's all about small day-to-day habits to bring those changes into our life. So Aquarius is represented by the water bearer, carrying water to the people, not for themselves, for the collective. So think of Prometheus in the Greek myth, right? Stealing fire from the gods to give humanity light. The revolutionary who breaks rules for the benefit of everyone, not just their own right. But here's the thing about water bearers: they carry the container, but they're not the water. They're the vessel, the channel, the medium, right? Aquarius isn't the revolution, it's the broadcaster of revolutionary frequency and energy, right? So the mythology here is about sacrifice for the collective benefit. Prometheus gets trained to a rock. He's living, eaten daily by an eagle for giving fire to humans. The water bearer carries the burden of bringing what's needed to those who need it, often at a personal cost, often, getting hated, disliked, because people don't like change, right? They like the comfort zone. So if you bring newness, often 9 times out of 10, it can be a lonely path. It's also reminding us to avoid the shadow of martyrdom by making sure we look after ourselves, we love on ourselves, we build up self-love and care and acceptance and forgiveness, right? But making sure that we don't sacrifice ourselves for the collective until there's no self left. This eclipse asks, can you serve the collective without disappearing? So, now I'm just going to talk about the Council of Ancestors in a bit more depth, although I'm going to, go into all the Sabian symbols a bit later on. So every culture has ancestor respect in one way or another. African traditions where ancestors are actively consulted, indigenous practices where 7 generations back and 7 generations forward are considered in every decision. Asian ancestral altars where the dead remain family members, I think this is more in Hindu traditions, and the Mexican Day of the Dead, Dia de los Muertos, me and words, right? But yeah, the Day of the Dead, where boundaries dissolve, and the Celtic Samhain, where the veil thinnens, right? And we can get in touch with the ancestors more. Even modern therapies, intergenerational trauma, is Western medicine catching up to what every traditional culture knew. The dead aren't done with us, even though we may be done with them, right? And often we carry them, we, as I said earlier, often we can dislike a primary caregiver and turn into that primary caregiver through genetics, even though we do have free will, but the strength of environmental factors, and this is when awareness comes in, where we need to be aware so we can choose the patterns and be aware of our day-to-day actions, because often who we think we are is like a big vast gap from who we actually are being, because we're not practicing awareness consciously, choosing our words and being aware of our habits and all of that. So we can figure out and move more into our authentic self-expression rather than just being what the world has made us, right? So Carl Jung would have called this collective unconscious activating, right? Internal family systems would say your ancestors are the parts carrying burdens from previous generations, and attachment theory points to inherited attachment styles. This eclipse says the pattern you're breaking isn't just yours, it's generations deep, right? And the council, the healthy ancestors, they're backing you, they died trapped and they want you out of that pattern, right? And like I said, for some of you it may not be your direct ancestors, it's guides, whatever, directing us all as a collective, because really there's just so much crap that I can't even mention going on in the world where we all kind of need a healing, right? And we have to tap into hope and faith, and it can be hard to stay in the love vibration with the news and all the crap that is happening, but the ancestors are wanting us all, those who are capable, to raise their consciousness, even though it can be hard to forgive. People have hurt you, you know. It can be hard to forgive, especially heartbreak and stuff. But if we just all carry on with the eye for an eye, you know, then the world is just going to continue down this destructive path, and it needs to stop somewhere, right? So now I'm going to talk about the planetary background, right? The aspects that the planets are making at the time of this eclipse. So this eclipse has 7 major aspects, where the tightest being the square to Uranus at just 1.23 separating. So I'm going to break down exactly how these aspects are influencing this solar eclipse in Aquarius, right? Because aspects are not abstract. They're the planetary conversation creating our lived experience at the time of this solar eclipse, right? So as I said, we've got the moon and the sun making a square to Uranus, separating. So although it's separating, this is still the tightest aspect. And as I said, Uranus rules Aquarius, so it's the eclipse's planetary ruler having a proper argument with the eclipse itself, right? So because it's square energy, right? So the square says, you want revolution? Here's actual disruption, not ascetic rebellion, you know, going back to, you know, TikTok trends and activism, but real change that scares you know, because sometimes it's easy to follow the trend, right, rather than, you know, think outside of the box, right? So separating aspects mean the energy is peaked, and, you know, we're meant to be integrating them. So the lightning has already struck. Now you're dealing with the aftermath, right? So what's broken, what's suddenly changed, that's Uranus. So it can bring sudden awareness of patterns that you couldn't see before. The moment you realize, oh my God, I'm doing exactly what my mother did. That shock, that recognition. And the square to Uranus from the moon and the sun, right, wants us to become aware of these patterns, right, even though it can be scary. The shadow manifestation of this energy is just change for change's sake, following the trend and all of that. Rebellion without purpose, breaking things that don't need breaking, right? Because sometimes Uranus energy can make us be the rebel without a cause, just like wanting to just disrupt flow for the sake of it, right? So it wants us to take the integration pathway of consciously changing, right? A conscious revolution, disruption with direction, change with direction, breaking what actually needs to be broken, not just everything that's in reach, right? So we've got the moon and the sun making a semi-sextile to Saturn. So as I said, in some systems, Saturn actually co-rules Aquarius, right, with Uranus. So this is a surprising friend. So Saturn often gets a bad reputation in astrology because it brings restriction, limitation and karma. But you know, it's not bad in the sense because Saturn says, okay, you want to be a doctor, what are you prepared to sacrifice? You can't be up all night Netflix king and chilling if you want to be a medical doctor, right? So it's all about wanting us to get real on what it takes to reach our dreams rather than getting in the way of our dreams itself, right? So ultimately, Saturn at the time of the eclipse in the semi-sextile to the moon and the sun, right, is basically telling us that it will hold the structure, the routine, the discipline whilst we revolutionize, while we make the changes. So it's bringing us the ability to be disciplined whilst we, you know, get out of our comfort zone, right? Which in some sense goes against Saturn's energy because it's more about tradition, but it's also revolutionary as well. But it's all about wanting us to plan before we do things. A lot of the time we just think and act without actually making a strategic plan, right? So this semi-sextile is supporting us building and, you know, getting stronger over the next 2 weeks and months. You can find yourself having discipline that you've never had before, you know, setting boundaries and, you know, creating that routine and structure. You know, Saturn is supporting the breakthrough. It's not preventing the change, right? So ultimately, it's the parts of you that are structured, routine, boundary and responsible that sometimes you may feel are the enemy, or you may lack these. It's asking you to build these, right? But we need, boundaries and responsibility, accountability and routine to meet our goals, right? And, routine, boundaries and responsibility are the containers, the spaces, right, that makes revolutionary, sustainable and long-term, right? Without Saturn, Uranus just destroys. With Saturn, Uranus can transform, right? And this is what the eclipse wants us to do, to change the generational dysfunction in particular, and also our toxic ways of relating to ourselves and others, right? We've also got the moon and the sun making a semi-sextile to Neptune, and Neptune and Saturn are both in Pisces, right? So this semi-sextile, the dream worker, is deep in spiritual, mystical, wanting us to dissolve old programming through dreams, through change, getting outside of our comfort zone, using our intuition and having a connection to something larger and bigger than just ourselves, right? So our dreams, on the practical front can get more vivid, you can remember them, our intuition can become more focused and the veil can thin, but we just need to watch out because Neptune energy can always make us escape into excessive drugs, alcohol, use and overusing anything that's toxic to us, and also being susceptible to ignoring red flags and manipulation, so we just need to watch out for that. Also, at times when we are, it can be hard to tell the difference between our small intuitive voice when there may be other voices, built on by anxiety or any other psychological or spiritual issues as well. So be gentle with yourself, write things down. If you can trust someone, go over plans with them, if you feel like I can't trust my intuition and stuff like that, but make a plan on how you can become more in tune with your intuition and trust yourself as well, while being gentle with yourself, that sometimes it can be hard for you to tell which voice is your actual intuition, right? So ultimately, the veil between the spiritual and the logical is getting thin, and Neptune's gift here is dissolving the vivid structure, routines, the comfort zone that Saturn might otherwise make too concrete. The back and forth between I need structure, routine, which is represented by Saturn, and I need flow, which is represented by Neptune energy, creates a living rhythm instead of a dead rule following. So the shadow work right now can be spiritual bypassing, using divine timing to avoid action, numbing through substances and escapism, right? And to integrate this energy, we have to, be more grounded in our mysticism, have our feet on ground and our head in the clouds, do both, allow ourselves to be led by both our intuition and our intellect, right? Letting neither rule, finding that balance. The moon and the sun also makes a sextile square to Jupiter, right? And this is applying at 1.55, and this creates a friction in our belief system, right? In our values. Jupiter wants us to expand, wants expansion, us to grow, wants us to have more optimism and faith, which I said earlier is what's needed in the world right now. But the sextile quadra is, an irritation aspect. It's 135-degree aspect. It's awkward and uncomfortable, but it brings that tension, it allows that tension to come to the surface and our beliefs to be challenged. Our beliefs actually our own, or they're just trends that we are told to follow, right? And what you had faith in, what you believed in may not hold anymore, may not be true anymore. What you thought was truth might just be inherited conditioning, right? And Jupiter in Gemini is about beliefs through information, faith through learning, and expansion through curiosity. So getting outside of our comfort zone, doing the research, right? And, getting the information, our own information, not information that's been curated. Often, especially in this polarized climate, we tend to just, with the algorithm, right, listen to content that the algorithm tells us that we may like, but sometimes sometimes we need to think outside of the box. That's, this eclipse is in Aquarius, Uranus, right? And to, listen to people that may have a different viewpoint than us. Critical thinking is getting more and more weaker nowadays, and we need to, build on that, because we can have our beliefs and other people can have their beliefs. That's fine, as long as they don't do any harm to other people, right? But sometimes we can just be, stuck on my beliefs are my beliefs and they're right and you're wrong and you need to believe what I believe. But the thing is that two or more things can be true at the same time, and then there's sort of universal truth, and then there's personal truths, right? So the Sabian symbol of the 22nd degree of Gemini, dancing couples crowd the barn in a harvest festival, gives the imagery of community celebration and collective joy, right? But the sesquiquadrate says the collective joy might require you to examine beliefs that don't actually serve the collective. The festival might require you to leave behind dogma, inherited patterns, rigid beliefs to join the dance. For us to be collective, we may actually have to leave some of our personal truths and really question, are they really true, really? And we're all allowed to have our personal beliefs, but that doesn't mean we have the right to say others must believe what we believe, right? So in terms of the psychological expression, how this energy might be felt, it can be that uncomfortable moment when you realize your beliefs are just your family beliefs installed before you could even think critically for yourself. Now you're thinking critically and the beliefs don't hold, and that can be scary. Our whole reality can shift, right? But this energy supports us to to move on, to upgrade our belief system, and also have grace and forgiveness for our families and others who may have installed faulty beliefs in us, and also forgiveness for ourselves for believing in things that we're ready to let go of, right? We also have the moon and the sun making a conjunction to the midheaven. So the midheaven represents public life, reputation and calling, and what we have been known for in our lives, right? So you may be a nurse, or I don't know, a doctor or ambulance driver or police people, why are these all service, or I don't know, a lawyer or a musician, what people know you for, like you may be a sister, brother, daughter, or a friend or a lover, what you're known for. So this eclipse conjunct the midheaven says your calling is being revealed to you and activated and will be made public over the next 6 months, right? And for some of you, this means career shifts, right? Career changes. For others, coming out in whatever way you've been hiding, right? For others, it's stepping into leadership, being more visible, and seen in the role that you've been avoiding because it requires being seen. Because sometimes we, especially if you're introverted like me, can, and like to work behind the scenes and stuff, it can be hard being seen. So it's at 046 orb, which means it's right there, right? The activation is immediate. So psychologically, we can sort of have that feeling of, I can't hide anymore. I have to do the thing I've been avoiding. My calling is knocking and I either answer or lose the opportunity, right? The eclipse on the midheaven doesn't give you a choice about visibility. It makes you visible whether you're ready or not. The question is, do you step into it consciously or get dragged into it, and for some of you it'd be willing, this energy works differently for different people, but for some of you maybe being seen in a big way, maybe doing podcasts, YouTube channel, whatever. For some of you it can just be being seen, and that's equally important as the person in your family who's like, no, I'm tired of this crap, we need to change as a family unit, right? We also have the sun and the moon making a trine to Hygeia, which is the goddess of health, wellness, preventative care. This also supports that the healing that we need this year, through these eclipses, is ancestral healing. And the trine is a harmonious energy, so this means this energy is going to flow more easier, and it wants us to really improve our physical, mental, emotional and spiritual health, right, dramatically, and saying that they will improve dramatically when we confront our ancestral patterns. The migraines might be due to inherited stress. Not always. There are medical reasons for things, being someone who suffers from medical issues myself as well. But the digestive issues might be inherited anxiety, or your health issues can be made worse by emotional and psychological trauma that's been unresolved as well, right? So just, working through our emotional and psychological and spiritual stuff can improve our physical symptoms of our digestion, our migraines. The insomnia that you have might be inherited, hypervigilance, so the hygienist message here in the trine to the moon and sun is heal the root, heal the root of the problem, heal the symptoms, our body, right? So now I'm going to talk about the 3 stelliums. This is concentrating energy that's happening, and they're all in Aquarius at the time. I have this solar ring of fire eclipse in Aquarius, right? So it's like lightning hitting the same spot 3 times when multiple planets are gathering together in a tight orb, all of them around 20% or more. They increase each other. One planet whispers, but 3 shout. And as I said, the 3 stelliums are all saying the same thing in different voices. Ultimately, innovate, change, break free, revolutionize, but do it wisely, right? So the first stellium between the moon, sun and Pallas, which brings warrior wisdom, breakthrough, as I said earlier. So our emotions represented by the moon, and our identity represented by the sun, and our strategic intelligence represented by Pallas come together. So it supports our emotional breakthrough through conscious awareness, and that meets our warrior, our fighter, our inner fighter, that self part of us, the part of ourselves, yeah, that's the one, and the right wording, that wants to stand up, right, who's not scared to break the pattern. So you're not just feeling the pattern, you're seeing it. It supports us in naming it and strategizing, yeah, that's the one, how to break it, to think about how we want to lose ourselves. So all these 3 functions are, online, working together at the same time, simultaneously, and that's rare, that's powerful. Use it. So psychologically, our emotional body and our conscious mind can agree for once. No split between I feel this but I think this other thing, integration. And Pallas adds the warrior energy, the fighter energy, making us not just aware, but armed with strategy. The breakthrough isn't just realization, it's about implementation, starting, doing right, making those practical changes or continuing them. It's calling us into the fact of we know what to do, we just need to do it, and it supports us to do that, right? So we've also got the stellium between the moon, Venus and Pallas at 12% orb. So this is love meeting strategy. So our emotions, the moon, our values and relationships, Venus, and our warrior wisdom, represented by Pallas, are talking to each other. So this is I love you meeting, but is this healthy meeting? Here's the strategic exit plan. Love doesn't bypass wisdom, right? Wisdom doesn't reject love. They collaborate, they work together. So psychologically, you can finally feel your feelings about relationships whilst thinking clearly about them. So codependency, may say love means no boundaries, but this stellium says love requires boundaries, right? And Venus and Pallas is the warrior energy who loves, the lover who fights wisely, the person who knows when to stay and when to leave and choose strategically, not reactively. So this energy can help those in toxic relationships or may have a toxic way of relating and thinking about yourself, right, to break free from those patterns as well. But it's reminding us, don't just blow your whole house down one at once, right? Some of you may need to do that, but just to think about a strategic plan. For some of you may be in cohesive relationships, so it takes a lot of planning, getting involved with agencies, you may have children involved, so just thinking about exit plan that, you know, does no harm to yourself or others, and protects you in the right ways, right? The third stellium is between Venus Pallis and the Moon's North Node, and this is at a 19% orb, right? So this is destiny going in our life direction through wise relationship, right? So again, Venus, Pallis and the Moon's North Node converge, come together, and this is what I love, meeting what I strategically think about, meeting where my soul is going. Your North Node, you know, the work here, the growth, the future, the destiny path requires both love and wisdom, right? It's reminding us that we can't get to where we need to get to through wisdom alone or through love alone. That's too naive. Through wisdom alone, that's too cold. We need both, right? So psychologically, our future depends on learning to love wisely and strategize lovingly. Healthy relationships, strategic boundaries, wise choices about who gets access to you. That's the destiny work, right? This is what, you know, this stellium is wanting us to do, right? And the patterns across all three, you know, the Pallis, the warrior wisdom, appears in all three stelliums. That's the key. Your pattern recognition, strategic intelligence, and the capacity, the ability to fight wisely and unlock everything else. Without Pallis, the Moon drowns in emotion. Without Pallis, Venus stays in toxic love. Without Pallis, the North Node feels like a vague destiny with no roadmap, right? Without a plan. But with Pallis, you're getting the energy to implement, start emotional breakthroughs, stellium 1, to love without losing yourself, stellium 2, and to walk your destiny path with actual steps, that's stellium 3. This eclipse hands you the sword. Over the next 6 months, your Pallis is activated in 3 ways at the same time. Trust your strategy, trust your pattern recognition, trust that you know what you know. That's the stellium's gift, right? So now I'm going to talk about the Sabian symbols, right? And this eclipse activate 7 symbols across the chart, and here's what each degree reveals, right? So we've got the moon at the 5th degrees of Aquarius, the council of ancestors, activating the nerve of our right fibula, right? And the eclipse essence is the dead back in the living, as I said before. Again, the sun is also there as well. So the essence of this is authority, channeling, working with ancestral wisdom. You know, we've got Pallis at the 14th degree of Aquarius, a train entering the tunnel, ruling the left tibial artery in our bodies. This is bringing us strategic wisdom, moving through darkness to light. And we've got the midhaven at the 4th degree of Aquarius that has the Sabian symbol, a Hindu healer, and this rules the left fibula, and the essence of this energy is public calling as a wounded healer. Uranus is at the 4th degree of Taurus, and this is the rainbow's pot of gold, and this rules the revolver in the human body, and this brings revolutionary breakthrough that reveals the treasure within us, right? Within the simple things in life. Jupiter is at the 22nd degree of Gemini, so as I said, this is dancing. Couples crowd the barn in a harvest festival. This rules our upper arm, and this brings joyful community, celebration of abundance. We've got Saturn at the 7th degree of Pisces. This is a cross lying on the rocks, and this rules the right talus, the ankle bone, and it allows us to, you know, let go of our burdens, abandon them, you know, to let go of the toxic habits, relationships and thoughts that are holding us back, and release our suffering, you know, to start the work or continue the work, right? Neptune's in the same degrees, and this rules the ankle bone as well, you know, because it's the same as Saturn. And the essence of this imagery for Neptune is spiritual martyrdom that we can let go of, that's dissolved, right? So it's allowing us to let go of caring for everybody else, but not caring for ourselves, right? So now I'm going to talk about the symbol foundation and the eclipse connection of these Sabian symbols, right? So the primary eclipse symbol, a council of ancestors at the 5th degree of Aquarius, unifies both the sun and the moon, you know, bringing them together, and they both rule the same body part, the nerve of the right fibula, and our emotional body, the moon, and our conscious identity, represented by the sun, are both channeling the same ancestral counsel through the same nerve pathway. This is, profound, deep, next level alignment. Our feelings and our awareness speak with one voice, the voice of those who came before. The elders are in session. They are discussing you, and here's what they're saying. Do what we couldn't, break what we couldn't break, live what we couldn't live. The Midhaven, a Hindu healer at the 4th degree of Aquarius, 1 degree before the eclipse, adds your public calling to the ancestral work, right? You're not just healing privately, you're becoming known as the healer. The wounded healer archetype is activating at your career point, whilst the eclipse channels ancestral counsel, and this means that your life work is breaking generational patterns publicly, and it is all of our work collectively if you think about it, because all of us have inherited different dysfunction across our nations, right, that needs to be break. Yes, we've inherited a lot of wisdom, so like I said earlier, don't throw the baby out with the bath water. Don't just hate tradition because it's tradition. A lot of the time tradition and what it says in certain religious books, some bits are a bit sketchy, right, but ultimately the message is love, but the execution of what humans do with it can be as far as way from what it even says in the tradition or the books, right? So this is about being the one that breaks the cycle, who teaches others to break the cycle, right? For some of you it'd be on a large scale, for some of you it'd just be working with your own family unit, which is equally a valid, right, to break toxicity. For others you'd just be doing the work alone, right? For others you may create content that others can see, helping them break the cycle, right? So it's calling the energy of the therapist who went to therapy, the healer who healed themselves first, and the Midhaven conjuncting this eclipse within a 1 degree orb means the next 6 months bring visibility for your healing work, right? And Uranus at the Rainbow's pot of gold reveals what the revolution finds, right? You're breaking patterns. The Uranus square, the eclipse, right? One of the tightest aspects, reminds us that there's treasure at the end of the journey. Not just metaphorical, but actual gifts. The breakthrough reveals our abilities and capabilities and talents that you didn't even know that you had, right? Talents that were buried under dysfunction. Joy that was repressed under trauma. The pot of gold isn't money, though it could be. It's ultimately the pot of gold is you, the real you, the free you. Uranus says break the pattern, find the treasure. The rainbow appears after the storm. Palace has the Sabian symbology of a train entering a tunnel, and this adds strategic intelligence to ancestral work. The train doesn't stop for the tunnel, it moves through darkness, trusting tracks laid by those who came before. Your warrior wisdom palace knows sometimes you can't see where you're going, but you keep moving forward anyway, because the infrastructure, ancestral strategic plan supports the journey. The tunnel has an exit, the tracks lead somewhere, so although you may not know where you're going to end up, we have that cliche of it's all about the journey, not just the destination, right? And this solar eclipse ring of fire draws our attention to that to start, right? Jupiter with the Sabian symbology of dancing couples crowding the barn in the harvest festival, so think of it as a crowded nightclub, right? Expands the vision beyond personal healing to community celebration, reminding us that this isn't solitary work. This is collective joy after collective labour. The barn, the shelter built together. The harvest, the abundance from shared work. The dancing couples, the partnership, the connection, the belonging. Jupiter says you're not just breaking patterns for yourself, you're creating space for others to dance, right? And we have Saturn and Neptune both with the Sabian symbology at the 7th degree of Pisces, right? Across lying on rocks, and this is critical. It reminds us not a cross being carried, that's martyrdom, not a cross being worshipped, that's religion, a cross lying down, abandoned, release, the symbol of suffering left on the rocks, no longer picked up. Saturn, that represents our father, or the most masculine parent, responsibility, burden, limitation, and Neptune, that represents spirituality, dissolution, letting things go, compassion. All agree that martyrdom needs to end, and this is, really enlightening, because we've got Saturn and Neptune in the same degree here, reminding us that the inherited suffering stops here. Saturn is and Neptune in Pisces is allowing us to do the healing, bringing discipline, and it's going to be there. Both of them are in Pisces for a while, supporting us to heal, right? And being disciplined with, Neptune can make us escape into our toxic habits, as I said, of indulging in drugs, alcohol, Netflix and chilling and all of that too much, because nothing in moderation is bad, right? So they're both allowing us to stop the suffering in a disciplined way, asking us not to carry the cross anymore, neither literally, represented by Saturn, the burden of tradition, nor spiritually, represented by Neptune. It's reminding us it's done, letting the past go, right? And altogether these 7 symbols create a complete narrative. The ancestral council supports you through emotion and identity, the moon and the sun coming together. Your public calling becomes the wounded healer, the teacher. This is the midhaven. So it's all about not being ashamed of your psychological, emotional, spiritual illnesses or physical disabilities, celebrating and working with them, allowing yourself to, yes, wounded, hurt, but also healed as well. You're allowed to be wounded and healed at the same time, healed. I will learn to speak one day, healed at the same time, So allowing you to love yourself regardless of your flaws, allowing you to love your weaknesses and strengths equally. And Uranus, the breakthrough that comes through the hidden treasure, the hidden talents within you, as you move strategically through the darkness, which is represented by Pallas. You create community and, can have a celebration represented by Jupiter, and you abandon the cross of martyrdom, right, and generational dysfunction and just following trends. This is represented by Saturn and Neptune in Pisces. So this is the full eclipse story for the next 6 months. All 7 symbols are active. They're talking to each other, they're talking to you, and they're asking for you to break free. So, as I said, now I'm going to talk about the positive meanings and practical uses of the Sabian symbols during this annual Ring of Fire solar eclipse in Aquarius. So, as I said, during this Ring of Fire eclipse, you are not alone. We've got the Council of Ancestors where the moon and the sun are. So, we are being asked to look at our family structures, things that we know about them. Maybe a grandmother, as I said, who stayed in an abusive marriage, that's now past, is achieving, you want to leave. Your grandfather who worked himself to death, or great-grandfather, because a lot of our grandparents are still alive, right? So a great grandfather who worked themselves to death, who wants you to rest. The great aunt who was crazy, probably just traumatized. She wants you to get therapy. When you do the work, boundaries, therapy, pattern breaking, you're not just healing yourself, you're healing backwards and forwards. 7 generations each direction according to the native beliefs, right? Get freed through your choice. And this is not to place a burden on you. It's to open you up to the possibility, or to cheer you on, to continue or start the work of trying to understand your emotional, psychological and spiritual trauma. The Hindu healer Sabian symbol at the midhaven says, you're being seen for this work. People will know you as the one who broke the pattern, the therapist, the teacher, the healer, the cycle breaker. So maybe, some of you have been thinking, as I said, starting that content channel or doing something, going into a new profession, right? This is like helping you, especially for those who wanted to go into like healthcare or the helping professions, right? The midhaven symbol showing us that our career, reputation and public life are being reorganized around this calling. Some of you will literally become healers, therapists, teachers and coaches due to this pattern of eclipses that are happening in February, March and August, right? Others will embody the archetype in different ways, different professions. The accountant who heals their firm's toxic culture, the parent who heals their family's dysfunction, the artist who heals through their work, and the midhaven conjunct the eclipse means your healing isn't private anymore. It's your contribution, whatever level you choose. Some of you are going to try, to heal others in a big way, and some of you are going to just do it in your own family, and they're both equally as valid and worthwhile, because as I said, we need a lot of healing in the world today. The rainbow's part of gold Sabian symbol where Uranus is says the breakthrough is worth it. Yes, it's scary. Yes, it's disruptive. Yes, you're losing the familiar, but at the end there's treasure, capabilities, abilities, talents you couldn't access while trapped in the pattern, joy you couldn't feel while performing, creativity you couldn't express while surviving, relationships you couldn't have while codependent. The pot of gold is the real you, the authentic you, your authentic self-expression, just allowed to just roam free, not sort of like held back by inherited trauma, free to love, free to live, free to create. And that's the treasure the Uranus square the eclipse reveals. Break the pattern, find yourself. That's the simple promise, right? The train symbology, represented by a palace, says your strategic intelligence is the key that unlocks ancestral work. You're not stumbling blindly, you're the train with tracks beneath you. Even when you can't see the tunnel, the infrastructure that holds the people on the other side that's helping you, maybe, your higher self, there is help there. Sometimes things happen in our life, we're like, why does this keep on happening? This is not to victim blame or shame or anything like that, but it's just allowing us to, tap into that strategic, intuitive intelligence and use pattern recognition as a gift. Do you always fall into toxic relationships? What's the root of your addictive habits? Again, it's hard to break out of the cycles, but step by step, day by day, if you start and continue the work, you can. It wants us to really pay attention and map our family systems, identify who in the council is healthy guidance versus, wounded projection, so just again, as I said earlier, sometimes we can throw the baby out with the bathwater. We can kind of just be like, well, I dislike my mum and dad, so everything they said and done was wrong. I don't believe that. I believe, especially in the world we live in today, there's always a lesson to be learned, and sometimes what people say and what they do can be vastly different, but a lot of people say some good things, and if we were actually to implement it, we could set ourselves free. So just looking back at your family patterns and see if there's anything there that you could sort of like start again, maybe tradition in your own way, of course, to work with your needs that can help you move forward, because your warrior wisdom, represented by Palace, can cut through the confusion right now. Trust your strategy even when you can't see the outcome. So it's all about making a decision, making a plan, knowing that you may not have all the steps of the plan yet, the train tracks, but just to keep on moving moving like the train does. And the harvest festival, represented by Jupiter's Sabian symbol, right, says that this work creates abundance, not just for you, but for everyone. You break the pattern, others feel permission to break theirs. You rest, others learn it's possible to rest. You set boundaries, others sees boundaries modeled, and you can lead by example and they can follow. You celebrate, other people can remember joy exists, and we're lacking faith and hope in the world as it stands, right? So Jupiter is expanding, and it wants us to heal ourselves and allowing our healing to radiate, to set off positive vibes by practical actions as well as intuitive thinking and manifestation. So it also reminds us that the barn, the home, the foundations, the day-to-day habits that you're building isn't for you alone, it's for the whole community of cycle breakers who need shelter, celebration and belonging. So the cross, laying down, that's represented by Saturn and Neptune Sabian symbols, right, is the permission you have been waiting for. You don't have to carry this anymore. The martyrdom, literally Saturn working yourself to death, sacrificing everything, shouldering family burdens, and spiritually Neptune, saying, wow, suffering is holy, it's good, it's, being codependent and the people pleaser, it's good, and it's good to help others, but we have to put our own mask on first. If the plane was going down, they say put your own oxygen mask on first. Other things like pain brings you closer to God, and sacrifices love, and it's truth in that. Sometimes I've got closer to the higher power through suffering, but I don't see the need to suffer unnecessary anymore by partaking in my own self-destructive habits and toxic relationships and all of that. So it wants us to think about, the sacrificing, the toxicity that we're ready to start or continue ending, right? Reminding us that we're allowed to put our pain down, we are allowed to grow, we are allowed to be survivors, even though we are allowed to be wounded healers, So, it's reminding us to receive the healing, the rocks receive the healing, the earth holds it, You can walk away with empty hands and light shoulders if we give our burdens to a higher power, and not in the way like, oh, we don't need to do day-to-day things to look after our physical, emotional, spiritual and financial health, but in a way that we allow ourselves to move on, right? And remember, healing is not selfish, it's survival, right? So now I'm just going to talk about the shadow work that we are going to be able to do, and obviously the negatives, the challenges of this eclipse energy, right? Because the shadow of the council of ancestors is either rejection, I am nothing like them, as I said earlier, or control. This is how we've always done it. Both are traps. True ancestral work is receiving wisdom while refusing dysfunction, taking the strength, leaving the violence, taking the resilience, leaving the martyrdom. This eclipse demands discernment, good judgment. Which ancestors, which family members, which friends, which lovers, are in the healthy counsel, guiding you forward on the spiritual and physical level, which are wounded, trying to keep you stuck. Not all ancestral voices want you free, and this is on the physical and the spiritual plane. This is why it's very important to practice grounding practices when you delve into the spiritual. So there's an old saying, misery likes company. Some want company in the dysfunction, and they don't want you to break out of the pattern. And it can be sad, because of course we want to take our family and friends with us. We want everyone to heal, but sometimes this is not possible. Sometimes our healing journey is very much a solo endeavor, a solo planner, solo work, So, learn to tell the difference between, who wants to help you heal and who wants to keep you in misery. Learning to tell the difference between the two, that's the work. And the Hindu Hilo shadow, where the midhaven is either one, becoming the wounded healer who never finishes healing, the perpetual patient, not the practitioner, not sort of like allowing yourself to help others, whether this is a family member or starting that podcast, that life coaching business, that therapy, going for that counselling course, go train to be a nurse, paramedic, whatever it is. Sometimes we think we have to be like a million times ahead. We have to be fully healed to help others, and that's not the case. Sometimes, we can just be one step ahead, and remember that healing works backward and forward as well. While we're helping others heal, they can be helping us heal just by, being in the space with them and them letting us in. So yes, the message of the Midhaven is, not to finish healing, but to start bringing in the new, doing something that can advance you on your healing journey, maybe by, helping someone else heal in a healthy way. The other side of the Midhaven energy is performing the healer role without doing your own shadow and inner child work, spiritual bypassing as a career. The Midhaven says you're being called to heal others, but only after healing yourself, or whilst healing yourself, with radical honesty about your processes, right? So that's what I'm saying, don't be afraid to start now, even though you're healing, because what I have found, we are never healed, we're always healing, right? So the shadow is either hiding your wounds, fake healer, or only sewing your wounds, professional victim, right? So the middle path is being healed enough to help, humble enough to admit you're still healing. The shadow of the pot of gold, Uranus, is either chasing treasure without doing breakthrough work, or wanting the reward without the risk, or doing breakthrough work but refusing to claim the treasure, self-sabotaging when success arrives, right? And Uranus square in this eclipse says you have to break something to find the gold. You can't keep the pattern and get the prize, but once you break it, you have to let yourself have the treasure. Some cycle breakers are so used to suffering that they can't receive abundance. That shadow, do the work, claim the gold, right? So the train entering the tunnel, shadow is either refusing to enter, staying stuck because you can't see the outcome, or 2, rushing through without, the tracks, the plans, right? Impulsive breaks with no strategic plan, trying to reach the destination without enjoying and enduring the journey, right? So Pali says enter the tunnel, but trust the strategy. Don't freeze in fear, don't rush without wisdom, move deliberately through what you can't see, trusting the intelligence you have built or will build. The shadow is losing your warrior wisdom to either fear or recklessness. Both, derail the train, make the train comes off the tracks, right? So the shadow of the harvest festival, Jupiter, right, is isolating. I heal alone, I don't need community. Or 2, performing celebration before you've done the work, spiritual bypassing the grief with forced joy, and happiness with force, joy and happiness. So Jupiter's challenge is you need others and you need to do your individual work first, right? You can't skip to the barn dance, to the party, to the fire festival, whatever. Oh my gosh, Burning Man festival, whatever, Glastonbury, download, whatever. If you haven't harvested anything, right? You can't harvest if you refuse community support. Both, and the shadow is choosing one extreme. And the shadow of the cross, where Saturn and Neptune is, right, on the rocks, is picking it back up out of guilt, picking back up your burdens, thinking, but who will carry this if I don't? Or number 2, abandoning all responsibility, not just martyrdom, throwing the baby out with the bathwater, as I said. And the challenge of Saturn and Neptune is to release the martyrdom, the victimness mentality, right? And just like, oh well, I have to do this, there's nowhere out. And I know sometimes we have to care for sick relatives and all of that. I know there are limitations, and it's good to help others and stuff, but it's also good to have boundaries too, and keeping healthy responsibility and boundaries, stopping sacrificing yourself by keeping toxic patterns. We have to learn to serve others wisely, right? putting down the cross, but not becoming selfish. The shadow is conflating. No more martyrdom with no more care. They are not the same. You can stop suffering and still love and care. That's maturity, but having the boundaries and not letting others walk over you, right? Okay, so now I'm just going to talk about, our health and well-being during this eclipse. So 7 body parts are activated across the chart, right? The eclipse chart. So we've got the nerve of the right fibula where the moon and the sun are. So this nerve lets your foot move, letting you walk forward. It's the nerve that when pinched, your foot drops, right? So if it's pinched, you can't walk properly. So symbolically, if you're pinched by your ancestral trauma, you can't move forward. The medicine that the eclipse is bringing us is, wanting us to do nerve glide exercises, anything creating space in the outer lower legs, so, gentle squats, stretches, stuff like that. Regular nervous system regulation, cold water baths for those who are brave or sours, right? Or breath work or Seiken practices, Tai Chi yoga as well. Your body, is processing generational material, so support it. And the fact that both the sun and moon rule this nerve during eclipses, wanting us to walk forward and putting our attention on the fact it needs us to become more emotionally aware and conscious in our alignment, right? And our heart and our head, our intuition and logic must agree in the same direction, right? The left fibula is where the midhaven rules, right? So this is a structural bone supporting our lower leg as well. So we've got a lot of leg work going on already. So if the left fibula is weak or fractured, you can't stand. So symbolically, your public calling needs structural support. You can't just announce you're a healer. You need training, you need to get certificates, practice, infrastructure, marketing, a website, a podcast, a YouTube channel, whatever. So the medicine of the midhaven is wanting us to build the bones, the foundations of our calling, or continue building, right? Get the degree, do the training, create the structure, or just get the certificates or the experience, or be prepared to always upgrade your skill set, right? Because, as long as you have safe practices and stuff, you don't always need to have a degree or anything like that, but just make sure that you have the right tools that you need to help people, right? It's reminding us that our reputation stands on solid foundation or it collapses, right? So we need to build correctly. And Uranus rules the vulva, the dangly bit at the back of your throat that prevents food and liquid from going up your nose and helps you speak clearly. So if it's swollen, by infection and allergies, you can't speak properly. So symbolically, Uranus rules your voice of evolution, your voice of what you need to do to move forward, So it's asking you, can you speak your breakthrough? Can you say what needs saying without choking on it? So the medicine that this Uranus energy is bringing us at the time of the eclipse is reminding us to look after our throat with, honey, warm liquids, rest our voice when needed. And symbolically, the breakthrough requires speaking. The pattern breaks when you name it. This was abuse. This was neglect. This stops with me. Your vulva, your voice is the instrument of revelation, of change, right? Of moving forward. Pallis rules the left tibial artery. So this is bringing blood flow to the strategic warrior wisdom. If this artery is blocked, our lower leg loses circulation. So symbolically, it's our strategic intelligence. And we have to ask, is it flowing or is it blocked? Pallis, medicine, movement, walking, stretching, yoga, warmth, hydration, blood flow, energy flow, strategic clarity. It's reminding us to keep it moving. The upper arm, Jupiter, is giving us strength for lifting. Jupiter's ruling the upper arm, right? Reaching and embracing. Jupiter rules expansion and growth. Your arms need to reach for community, lift others up, lift yourself up, embrace yourself, embrace your people. If your arms are weak, you can't do these things right. So the medicine at this eclipse for your arms is doing strength training and stretching and any other exercise, right? Symbolically, it's wanting us to build the ability, the capacity to go beyond ourselves, to reach beyond ourselves. That's Jupiter's harvest festival, arms wide enough to hold the community. The right talus, the ankle, where Saturn and Neptune are, the ankle bone that bears weight whilst allowing movement. If your ankles are weak or painful, you either carry too much weight, Saturn, or have no structure to carry what's necessary, also Saturn, or are dissolving necessary boundaries, which is ruled by Neptune. And remember, Pisces rules the feet as well in Neptune. So of course there's medical reasons for these problems as well, but it's just reminding us that to do ankle work, balance exercises, strengthen our surrounding muscles, stretching our calves and Achilles heel. And symbolically, our ankles are where we carry a load whilst also staying mobile. This is where you learn to bear the necessary weight without martyrdom, right? That's the Saturn-Neptune medicine. So now I'm just going to talk about some eclipse rituals that these Sabian symbols support. So the sun and the moon, to, if you're more drawn to that energy, set up a small table with photos of your ancestors or representations if you don't have photos. Light 2 candles, one for the moon, emotions, one for the sun, identity. Speak to the health council, your ancestors, your higher power, your higher self, saying, I'm breaking this pattern, I need your support. My heart and mind agree. This ends with me. Then listen. Proper listen. Not with your ears, but with your body. What do you feel? Where? That's them responding. Do this throughout the eclipse season, so anytime during the 6 months, right? After the eclipse, and remember the council, is in session, and both luminaries, the sun and the moon, increase the message. If you want to tap into the midhaven, 10th house sort of energy, the healer's dedication, you can write out your calling. I am called to heal. Fill in the blank. What is it you need to heal on the psychological, emotional, spiritual, physical or financial level? Even if you don't know specifics yet, name the direction, such as I am called to heal family patterns, I am called to heal through teaching, I am called to heal my profession's toxic culture. Write it down, put it somewhere visible, right? This is your midhaven work for the next 6 months. The universe is asking, what are you healing? Answer clearly, and it may not come, the day of the eclipse, it may come after, but the point is to just, ask the question and, write down what comes up. You could do a treasure hunt, yay, for your inner child, woo! Uranus is supporting this, so you can make a list titled, what I will find when I break this pattern. List the abilities, the gifts, the joys, the hope, the faith that are currently buried within you, right? Such as, I will find my creativity, I will find authentic relationships, I will find rest, I will find my voice, I will find myself, I will find my inner child, or go and actual treasure hunt, go into a forest and do some imagination playing. If you got strong Neptune and all that energy, but I'm going to give advice for all the 12 sun and rising signs as well. So moon, did I say moon, sun and rising signs at the end? So check the timestamps for that. But so remember, whatever the treasure you are hunting, this is your pot of gold. You're not breaking the pattern just to break it. You're breaking it to find yourself. Keep the list visible, so as a sticky note on your phone or in your room, wherever, right? And when the breakthrough feels too hard, read it. Remember what you're finding, right? If you want to work with palace energy, the train, right, on the tracks. You can do a train visualization. Close your eyes, imagine yourself on the train entering a tunnel. You can't see where you're going, but you feel the tracks beneath you, solid, reliable, laid by your own strategic intelligence and ancestral wisdom combined. You don't need to see, you need to trust. Ride through the darkness knowing the tracks hold, supporting you, and the exit appears when it's time, right? The end game of your plan will appear when it's ready. You don't have to have all the steps right, and you can do this repeatedly during the eclipse timing window, which I'm going to go into more in about half an hour or so, because this is a deep dive, right? So if you want to work with Jupiter energy, host something, put on a party, a community celebration, a celebration just with yourself in your room, with a lover, with the friends, game night, dance party in the living room, book club, anything where people gather, or all your different sides of your personalities gather, right, where you can share and celebrate together. Jupiter says healing isn't complete until it's said. The barn isn't built for just one person. Creative, collective joy, that's the medicine. And you can also try a cross laying ceremony to work with the Saturn Neptune energy. So find a stick or make a cross, say it from twigs, write on it or speak to it what martyrdom, victimhood you're releasing. Name it specifically. I release the belief that suffering makes me holy. I release carrying my grandmother's grief. I release working myself to death. Then lay it down on the rocks, literally, or visualize, then walk away. Leave it there. You don't have to carry this anymore. Repeat if guilt tries to make you pick it back up. So in terms with working with your body during this eclipse, right, we've got a lot of leg energy, so you can stretch your calves daily, roll out your lower leg with a foam roller or a massager, see a physio if you're getting numbness or foot drop. Symbolically, it's all about walking forward with intention, like I'm walking away from. Name the pattern, name what you're walking away from. Every step, every daily habit, activates the nerve, activates your, your feet, choosing movement, starting what your ancestors, what your higher self wants for you, what your higher self wants for you. You can also do some calf rises, some balance work, because this is your public foundation. The midhaven, wanting you to build a strong foundation. The world needs to see you standing. You can look after your throat, as I said, with like a voice rest when hoarse, kind of like how my voice is getting now, right? Avoid shouting, but do speak your truth. The revolution, requires your voice. Protect it, use it. That's Uranus medicine, right? So it's important to keep your blood flowing, walk daily, stretch, stay hydrated, eat foods that support circulation. Strategic intelligence need flow, move your body, clear your strategy, to work with palace energy. In terms of Jupiter, anything that, sort of like trains your arms, so strength training, lift weights, do push-ups and use resistant bands, build the capacity to reach, to lift and embrace, right? Jupiter needs strong homes to hold you and the community, remember? To look after your ankles, again, stand on one foot, use a balance board, strengthen your calves, stretch your Achilles. If your ankles feel unstable, use ankle supports temporarily whilst building strength. Symbolically, our ankles are foundations. If they're too rigid, they will snap. Too loose, they will collapse. Find the balance. That's the work. So all in all, the Sabian symbols are calling us to do the emotional work and identity work, and seeing that they are the same work and that you're not split. Your strengths and your weaknesses are you, and that's okay. Over the next 6 months, integration is your superpower. Remember, your heart knows what your head knows, your emotions want, what your identity wants. Listen to both. They're saying the same thing. You know, the Hindu healer at the Midhaven is saying this isn't just personal healing, it's a calling. Your career, you know, what you will be known for the next 6 months brings visibility for your healing work. Some will judge, most will be inspired. Let yourself be seen. The wounded healer doesn't hide wounds, they transform wounds into medicine for others. That's the work, right? And Uranus's pot of gold says the treasure is real. You're not imagining it. Break the pattern, find yourself, the real you, not the survivor you, not the performance you, not the trauma response you, the real you with all your abilities intact. That's the gold. It's worth the storm. It's worth the breakthrough. Claim it. And Palace says, you know, your warrior wisdom carries you through. Trust your strategy. Keep moving. The tunnel will end. The darkness will end, you know. Have faith. Have some hope. And Jupiter brings that right, reminding us that we're not alone. Say your healing. Create your community. I believe everyone's got a niche. You may think, oh, there's a million other podcasts or whatever out there, but there's people out there who will only listen to you. And that's how your personal transformation becomes a cultural shift, a cultural change, right? Saturn and Neptune as cross laying down, right? Say stop the martyrdom, stop the toxic behaviors, the toxic relationships. You have permission to put them down. The ancestors who carried this cross are begging you to leave it on the rocks, to let go. They want you free. Honor them by living what they couldn't. That's the final integration. That's the work. And as I said, for some of you, it's about, you know, living what you incarnated into this life to do, you know, and what your higher self wants. Is not just about ancestors, you know, doing things for others. Maybe you've always been doing things for others, you know, but this eclipse is calling us to work with our true self and to move forward, right? So now I'm going to talk more about the numerology and sacred geometry of this eclipse. So the number 5 in numerology represents change, freedom, adventure, breaking free from constraint, from restrictions, and it's the midpoint of 1 to 9, right? So Aquarius at the 5th degree, this is innovation meeting revolution, right? 5 fingers, 5 senses, 5-pointed star, humanity, fully express your authentic self, fully express, right? So the eclipse at the 5th degree says use all your 5 senses, all 5 fingers, all your human ability to break what needs breaking. The number itself is liberation because it's in the middle, it's balance, right? So this eclipse is asking us to bring balance to our psychological, emotional, spiritual, financial health and our physical health. I think I left that one out, and it's supporting us to do that. And the sacred pattern is the quintile aspect, a nice sort of aspect in astrology. It's a 72-degree aspect, and this creates a 5-pointed star in charts, and this is the sacred geometry of creativity and talent. So, you know, eclipse doesn't form as at quintiles, but the 5th position itself, you know, the sun and the moon being at the 5th degree of Aquarius, right, resonates with this frequency. So it's wanting us to use creativity as revolution, talent as a breakthrough, and not talent that gets likes on social media and all of that. Talent that you want to express, right? And, you know, remember, maybe everyone won't like it, but your niche, you know, there's people out there who only want whatever it is you're going to be doing in the way that you do it. They want to see that, right? They want to tune into that. So what you are uniquely good at becomes the tool for pattern breaking, right? So embrace yourself, even though you may think, oh, well, I'll never be a superstar, whatever, but you don't need to be. You just need to find your community, right? So in terms of the Karmic Reckoning, the why of this eclipse, so this is the Aquarian rebellion, right? Some of you have been a revolutionary before in past lives. The one who spoke truth to power and got silence for it, right? The one who saw the future clearly and was called mad. The one who broke from tradition and paid the price. That pattern lives in your body as fear as being seen, fear of being different, fear of your own knowing. So this could be this life, you know, childhood, school can be really hard for a lot of us, right? Or family members saying you have to be this or that to be loved by us and accepted by us, right? So this eclipse says the punishment you're afraid of has already happened in another time. You're carrying past life fear into present life and paralysis, staying stuck in toxicity, and it's time to pull it down. And we can't change the past, right? We can't change what others have done, but we can create the future we want, right? As we move forward. So in terms of the karmic activation, maybe your family has a pattern with authority, maybe it's compliance, head down, don't make waves, survival through submission, as I just said. Maybe it's rebellion, fight everything, burn it all down, no compromise, right? Either way, you may have inherited a stance towards power that isn't yours. It's your grandfather's response to war, maybe, your grandmother's response to poverty, maybe, your parents' response to their parents, and this eclipse pattern says, what's your response? Not theirs, yours, from your life, from your healing. The bloodline karma surfacing, coming up for review, is codependency masked as loyalty, and a lot of time, it's what we get stuck into, people pleasing out of loyalty and thinking, oh well, I know this person for years, I got to stay friends with them, or it's my family, and yeah, we have to care for our family and stuff, but sometimes, we can literally not have our own beliefs. We can only believe what we were told to believe, and it's not always bad. As I said earlier, we don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater, but we don't want to stop our true selves from expressing either, right? So yeah, this eclipse is activating codependency, masters loyalty, emotional unavailability, masters strength, martyrdom, victimhood, master service, people pleasing, masked as kindness, and family survival strategies that worked once but are straining now, and this eclipse makes them visible so you can choose differently. So in terms of the why this eclipse, why now, right, in the contents of our north nodes where they are, right? So Aquarius is in, that's where the north node is, and Leo is where the south node is, and they moved in 2025 around May, I think it was, it could have been earlier, but they're staying there to around November this year, right? In the Vedic sidereal system, which all of this eclipse is based on. So it's asking us, can we innovate Aquarius without losing our heart, represented by Leo energy? Can you serve the collective without performing for approval? Can you be part of the group while staying authentic to yourself? This Aquarius eclipse at the North Node says your uniqueness serves the revolution. Your innovation isn't selfish, it's what the collective needs from you, right? You don't have to choose between being yourself and belonging. The right people want you to be authentic, not performing. The wrong people want you to comply. This eclipse sorts which is which, and the North Node in Aquarius asks you to grow into it. Authenticity over approval, collective service over individual glory, innovation over tradition for tradition's sake, chosen family over biological obligation when biology is toxic, future vision over past repetition and living in the path, right, allowing yourself to move forward. And the South Node in Leo asks you to release performing for applause and likes, the need to be special, chosen, seen above others, ego attachments to being a star, pride that prevents teamwork, right, and the same around orderliness. The tension, Leo's look at me versus Aquarius, we are all in this together, both are needed. You need healthy Leo energy, which is confidence, creativity and joy, to motivate healthy Aquarius energy, which is innovation, being open to the new, to the future, collective service, to revolution. But toxic Leo energy is narcissism, attention seeking, being lost in this I am special complex, and this blocks the gifts of Aquarius. So this eclipse asks, can you be confident without needing the lights and applause? Can you create without needing to be the star? Can you lead by serving rather than just performing? So if you look back 19 years following the solar cycle to early 2007. What was happening in your life around then? Some of you may be like, I weren't even born then, but you know, yeah, similar themes are being completed now. What pattern were you starting to break in 2007? What awareness was just beginning? What you couldn't see clearly then, you're seeing now. The cycle spirals, right? You're not going backwards, you're completing what you began. Okay, so now I'm just going to talk about the cycle breaker's burden, right? It can be hard to face our shadow, to heal the inner child, to go backwards into our psychological and spiritual wounds, right? You may be the first in your family to face this pattern, the toxic habits in your family consciously. You know, everyone before you may have just survived it, ignored it, passed it down, you know, repeated it, and you can be the one that says, I see it. And it can be lonely, but it's brave, you know, even though it can be lonely and hard to deal with that. But what you have to remember that, you know, you're being open to healing yourself backwards and forward at the same time, simultaneously. Like Fleabag, I don't know if you watched that survey. If not, check it out, you may like it. Breaking the fourth wall, suddenly aware she's in a pattern, suddenly able to speak to the audience whilst everyone else stays in the script. That's what the eclipse gives you, the awareness, the break, the choice. You're not crazy for seeing what others don't see. You're awake, and being awake in the sleeping family is isolating as F-U-C-K, right? Here's what they don't tell you about being first. Everyone before you had the same potential to break this, and they didn't. Not because they're weak, maybe it was because they weren't ready, weren't supported, weren't in the right circumstances, environment, or legitimately couldn't survive the break or didn't even know it was toxic. But you can break the pattern. And that's not superiority, thinking you're better, you know, doing too much. That's timing, that's privilege. You know, we've got access to therapy now. Maybe you've got financial stability, a chosen family. Maybe you're distant from your family of origin, but that's also responsibility, right? Some of you agree at a soul level to be the one who breaks this, the first in your family to get therapy, the first to leave the abusive dynamic, the first to rest instead of working themselves to death, the first to speak about what everyone else stays silent about. The agreement is coming due, not as punishment, as purpose. You're not broken, you're responding to a broken system by becoming the one who stops passing it down. That's the work. It's also knackering, but do it anyway. The soul contract isn't suffer alone forever, it's break this so the next generation doesn't have to. Your kids, biological or chosen or metaphorical, won't carry this. You're the fire break. You know, you stop the blaze here. That's the contract. And here's the shadow nobody mentions. You will be villainized for it. The family system wants, you know, homeostasis to stay in the status quo, the comfort zone. Us humans can hate change, right? Anything that's changed as well, you know. And breaking the pattern can destabilize everyone. They can call you selfish, dramatic, ungrateful. Let them. Their discomfort is their work, as I said earlier. Your freedom is your work. The ancestors who wanted to break this and couldn't, they're on your side. The living who want you to stay stuck, they're not your counsel. Choose which voices you listen to. This eclipse says the counsel of healthy ancestors back you. The soul contract is alive. The pattern ends with you. For the next 6 months, every time you choose differently, you're fulfilling the agreement. That's the work. That's why you're here. It's lonely until it isn't, and I can vouch for that. It is lonely until it isn't, right? But you know, it's worth it. Other cycle breakers recognize each other. You will find your people. They're doing the same work in different families. This eclipse helps you find them, right? Okay, so in terms of the Jungian shadow work meaning, ultimately, as I said, the shadow work is everything you have been repressing. For some of you, that's rage. Your family doesn't do anger. They do passive aggression. They do the silent treatment, but not clean anger. This eclipse says, feel the rage. For others, the shadow is need. Your family does independence, self-sufficiency. I don't need anyone, which is a lie. This eclipse says admit you need, whether it's, needing different sides of yourself, your inner child to feel nurtured, or, someone or people you can trust, because sometimes it can be hard, and sometimes we have to be lone wolves because, there's no other option, but we can love on ourselves and give it ourselves what we need, right? Ultimately, the eclipse says admit what you need, whatever you have disowned to fit your family's acceptable emotional range, or, the people around you, emotional or other ranges, that comes up right now, accept it, accept your emotional, psychological, spiritual pain, not to destroy you, but to integrate it, to make you whole, right? Because we have to have the shadow and the light, our strengths and our weaknesses, and accept them, right? Flaws and all. So in terms of, for some of you, it could be projection mechanics, that person who drives you mental, they're showing you something you can't see in yourself. And sometimes it can be hard to admit this. Oh, I hated this for myself. We do. Oh no, I'm not like this person. But typically, like I said earlier in the beginning, remember, for all those who are still with me, we often turn into those and we say we're not like if we're not aware. This is when conscious attention and awareness and knowing ourselves is important, right? So yeah, the person who drives you mental, they're showing you something you can't see in yourself. Their manipulation, you're sensitive to. Check your own subtle control. You could be an undercover control freak. There's different ways. People pleasing can be a form of control. It's controlling how people respond to us, right? Maybe it's the neediness you can't stand in others. That's your unmet needs. The eclipse withdraws projections, You can see yourself clearly and it can be uncomfortable, but it's necessary, right? So see this as a crisis that is a catalyst and motivator for change. It's danger, it's chaos, but it's also opportunity for the new, right? So eclipses on the astrological level create a crisis that forces a choice. And although we can just think, oh no, chaos, crisis, disaster, it doesn't mean that, right? It means what's become unsustainable, such as a toxic way of living, relationship, becomes undeniable. The relationship that's been dying quietly for years, suddenly you can't pretend anymore. The job that's been killing you slowly, suddenly you can't show up anymore. The family dynamic that's been toxic forever, suddenly you can't participate in it anymore, right? You can't do it anymore, right? The crisis is the gift. It forces the choice you've been avoiding. So the so true detective, right? Time is a flat circle. You're not having like new problems. You're having the same problem in different clothes until you face it properly. And the eclipse gives you the energy to face it, right? So now I'm just going to talk about dream work and subconscious integration before moving on to the good stuff, such as, the manifestation and release, where I give you the timing, and then that sacred information, tools and practices you can use, more about relationship guidance, dietary and lifestyle, self-reflection questions, and the zodiac guidance. So stay tuned for all of that, right? So now I'm going to talk about dream work and subconscious integration. So 6 weeks surrounding this eclipse, so 3 weeks before, maybe 3 weeks after, dreams can be more vivid, symbolic, and sometimes prophetic. That's not mystical, it's psychological. Your subconscious is working overtime to integrate what your consciousness can't hold yet or doesn't know yet. Dreams are where the council meets you, where ancestors show up, where you process material too big for the waking mind. So in order to track your subconscious messages, watch out for dreams that have like ancestral figures appearing, maybe grandparents, great aunts, people from old family photos, you know, what's for childhood homes, family gatherings, rituals, exes, stuff like that, unresolved business. As I said, rituals you haven't thought about in years, dreams, goals, plans, anything, you know, songs you haven't heard for a while, and you wake up with a song, and you know, pay attention to your dreams. Watch out for water imagery, the river, the ocean. Watch for breaking objects, like doors, opening bridges, you know, opening doors, crossings. These aren't random, they're your subconscious showing you the work, you know. So you can also, you know, I would say write down your dreams, right? And keep a notebook beside your bed, your phone, so you can voice note into it. Write down, speak, you know, everything immediately before you wake up, before you move, before you think. Don't edit, don't analyze yet, you know, just record images, feelings, colours, people, symbols. After a week, read back what patterns, what repeats. That's the message. Your subconscious speaks in patterns, not in sentences, right? So to integrate your dreams or waking thoughts right now, you know, just pay attention to them. Remember, sometimes some things need to be healed whilst you're sleeping. You can't force it. You can support it. You know, have a safe sleep space, get comfy, consistent bedtime, no screams before bed, calming rituals, let your subconscious do its work. The council, you know, meets up in dream time, so rested, you know. Okay, so now I'm going to talk about the manifestation and the release, the how. So the solar eclipse emphasis is what you're calling in. It's the new moon, right? So solar eclipses increase and speed up manifestation, but not, you know, manifest a car manifestation, soul level manifestation, new identity, new path, new way of being. Over the next 6 months, you're calling in authentic community, Aquarius energy, right? Conscious rebellion, not inherited, not following, you know, what social media tells you to rebel against or your family rebels against. Choosing where you put your energy by questioning your values, you know. Having more of a healthier relationship with authority, especially self-empowerment, the ability to be unique whilst also belonging to the bigger collective, right? And a rhythm that survives the fire, which is represented by, you know, the Pada, the Nisan, that Sakra, 5th degree of Aquarius, right? So now I'm going to give you 3 tier action steps, right, to help you. So tier 1, immediately, the eclipse peak window between the 14th and the 20th of February. This is your crisis management, right? The eclipse window is intense. Don't make major life decisions here unless you absolutely must. Do journal, cry, rage, scream, jump, do whatever, you know. Move your body, call your therapist, be your own therapist. Lean on trusted people, lean on yourself, forgive yourself, love yourself, healthy self-care, rest, don't burn out. Don't quit your job impulsively, end relationships impulsively or rashly, or make big financial decisions from panic. The lightning strikes now. Respond, don't react, right? Tier 2, ongoing. This is eclipse season. This is 6 weeks in total. So daily practices, morning pages, therapy weekly if you can access it, or personal development check-ins with yourself, movement daily, walk, yoga, dance, tai chi, anything that processes energy, housework even, you know, cleaning, ancestral altar work, boundary practice, small no's leading to big no's, you know, practicing saying no to people who drain your energy, right? Notice patterns, name them. I'm doing the thing my mother did, you know, or, you know, I'm doing what people tell me to do. I need to choose and find my own path. I see where I'm going wrong. Now I'm going to choose differently. Each small choice compounds, you know, grows into big. It's like one habit. One day you spend 5 minutes on building something new, then one day it's 10 minutes, then soon it's an hour, you know. Compound interest, small daily changes leading to the big ones, right? Tier 3, which is the foundational approach, is structural shifts, routine changes over 6 months. Find your people. Aquarius craves authentic community. Leave relationship jobs that require you to be small. In Tier 3, this is a 6-month period, so study slowly does it, right? Study, research, and steady slowly does it. So build a lifestyle that honors your actual rhythm, not inherited rhythm. Therapy, long-term personal development plans. Ancestral healing work, maybe that's formal. Constellation work, working more with astrology, psychology, some manic tools, or informal, talking to photos, altar work, acknowledging what you're carrying, building through, the psychological, emotional trauma, daring to try new things and working with your trauma, right? Building a foundation for a life that's yours, not inherited, not what social media or anyone else tells you to do, not inherited, that's important, but values a life that is yours, Do not perform an identity, be who you are. So some of you may feel ready to act straight away. Brilliant. Trust that. Others need days to pass to process what comes up. This is equally valid. Work with your own energy. The shadow question is, are you waiting for genuine integration or avoiding what needs to be faced? Only you know. Be honest. Neither rushing nor avoiding serves you. Timing is everything. You'll know when it's time to move on, because it would just happen, right? So as I said, you can use journaling prompts like, what pattern am I breaking? What did my ancestors want for me that they couldn't have? What revolution is actually mine? Where am I performing rebellion instead of living it? Meditate, sit, breathe. Imagine the council of healthy ancestors or guides behind you. Follow their support. Follow your higher power support. Follow your higher self support, right? Ask, what do you want me to know? Listen with your body, not your mind. What do you feel? That's the answer, right? Practice boundaries. Start small. Like, I can't make that event. I need some space. This doesn't work for me. Build a muscle. Small nose now, bigger nose later. So now I'm going to talk about the Nakshatra that the moon and the sun are in at the time of this solar annular ring of fire eclipse in Aquarius, right? So it's in the Denisa Nakshatra, which is ruled by the drum, the symbology, and also has the theme of the wealthiest, right? The wealthiest, so abundance, right? Not just on the material level, but on the physical, spiritual, emotional, psychological levels as well. So this Nakshatra is ruled by Mars and symbolized by a drum or a musical instrument, right? Like a bass as well, just think, a BT musical instrument, right? So it spans from the 23 degrees 20 of Capricorn in Vedic astrology to 640 degrees, and the core meaning is rhythm, synchronicity, wealth through timing. The drummer, fame with alignment, so fame through alignment, dancing with universal timing, and the power to give fame and abundance through perfect synchronization. So at 5 degrees Aquarius in the Nisapada 4, which has a Scorpion and Vamsa ruled by Mars, as I said, and this is the most intense pada. Rhythm, surviving intensity, timing proven through fire, heartbreak, suffering, synchronicity tested by transformation, so our ability to get outside of our comfort zone, letting go of the things we need to let go of, right? And if we think about the Bear, the TV show, the kitchen during peak service, everyone's rhythm has to hold on, and work, through the process to make sure the orders get out on time or the whole system collapses, right? So one person off beat and the entire brigade workforce suffers, right? That's part of 4 energy, intense, high stakes, but also high rewards, right? Rhythm or chaos, basically. Okay, so this Nakshatra is asking us to find our rhythm, our actual rhythm, not our family's imposed tempo, not what our nations, religions, or anyone else tells us to move to. And this doesn't mean we have to move away from our religions, our connection to our higher power or whatever. It's about rebuilding the relationship on your terms, right? And with your beliefs, with your religions, with your friends, with your family, you know? So yeah, your parents had a pace, work hard, sacrifice, push through, never rest. That's their beat, but is it yours? Or have you been drumming someone else's rhythm so long you've forgotten your own? Denisa says fame and wealth come through synchronization, and this doesn't mean, popularity and social media and the world front. It just means, it can mean fame for some of you, of course, but it just means expertise, or sort of like you getting to where you want to go, measured by your standards, not what the world tells you that wealth and fame is, right? So yeah, wealth and fame can come through synchronization, but synchronization with what, you may be asking? Well, not with your family's expectations, not with society's sud, but with cosmic timing, with your soul's beat, with your higher self, with the moment's actual requirement, not what you think should be required. This eclipse strips the false rhythm so you can find the true one underneath it all, right? So what I'm going to talk about now is our lived experience, right? And how we can maintain our beat, walk into our own self-expression and needs and beliefs under pressure, the pressure of the world and its mother telling us who to be, right? So this can show up when everything's falling apart and you have to keep your rhythm anyway, like the drummer in the band. Guitar breaks a string, singer forgets lyrics, but you keep the beat, right? Everyone else can improvise around solid rhythm. This eclipse tests if you can maintain your center whilst everything around you shifts and changes. Can you stay in your timing whilst others panic? That's Denise's mystery. Not rigid, flexible, but consistently rhythmic, right? Holding the tune, holding the beat. The beat holds even when the melody changes. It's also giving the Mayor of Easttown energy too. Mayor maintaining her detective work, her care for her community, her rhythm of showing up, even whilst her personal life is absolute chaos. The custody battle, daughter hates her, grandson's other grandmother challenging custody, ex-husband remarried, her own mother declining. Sorry, spoiler alert, but she shows up for work, she maintains the beat, she keeps rhythm through the fire, and that's Denise Parda 4. That's what the eclipse teaches you, right? So, as I said, the Navasa Parda 4 is Scorpio, ruled by Mars. This brings depth, intensity, transformation, death, rebirth energy to the rhythm work. Your timing isn't just getting tested, it's being destroyed and rebuilt so you can, be better, and not better on anyone else's standards but your own. So you may find that the rhythm that worked before might not survive this fire, and that's the point. What emerges is a deeper beat, more authentic tempo, rhythm that comes from your actual core, not the performance of rhythm. Scorpio here demands go to the depths. Surface rhythm won't cut it. Find the beat in your bones, in your blood, in your lineage. The ancestral rhythm, the council of ancestors meets your rhythm, the young leader creating a new rhythm, the synthesis, the new you, the authentic you. That's the work, that's the gift, that's the eclipse. So in terms of the psychological depth and shadow working more focused that we can do during this Ring of Fire eclipse, it ain't called that for no reason, right, in Aquarius. So the shadow can be only maintaining your personal rhythm whilst ignoring cosmic timing, stubborn, offbeat, out of sync energy, clinging to your comfort zone even though it's time to let go. And I know it's hard to let go of your comfort zone, right? But slow and steady does it, as I said. Or some of you may get caught up in the cosmic rhythm whilst losing your own personal tempo, swept away, no grounding, no self. Just this comes when you find, I don't know, a new philosophy and you don't make it your own, right? A new belief, you just follow it, you lose yourself, you try to emulate, be what social media tells you to do what gets likes, right? So to integrate this energy, we need to do both. We need to match our own beat, our own self-expression with the universal beat of the collective, meeting the needs of our personal needs and the collective needs, the self and the cosmos, right? Dancing together. The shadow for some is performing rhythm without feeling it, looking synchronized whilst internally chaotic. And of course, as we go through the changes, we're not going to be perfect. Chaos will be within, but it's all about admitting it, right? Sometimes it can be like, oh, I'm perfect or not, I'm perfect, if we take the belief of, spiritual bypassing, pretending everything's fine, not acknowledging the shadow, right? So this eclipse says authentic rhythm or no rhythm. Stop faking the beat. Either find it genuinely or admit you haven't found it yet. Both are fine. Performance isn't, right? So to practically apply this energy over the coming 6 months, because this energy of the eclipse lasts us right up until August, the time of the next solar eclipse, right? So find your actual rhythm. What time do you naturally wake? When do you have energy? When do you need rest? Not when you should, when you actually do. Build life around your rhythm, not against it. If you're a night person, stop trying to be a morning person. If you need 9 hours of sleep, stop surviving on 6. If you need 3 days alone after social events, stop booking back-to-back plans. The Nisha gives fame and wealth through alignment, right? Alignment means your life's tempo matches your soul's tempo. When that happens, everything flows. Opportunities come. Right people appear. Timing clicks. That's not magic. That's what happens when you stop fighting your natural rhythm. So if we think about our welders, or in the olden times it was the blacksmiths, they forge, mold metal. So they put the metal into the fire, it gets heated until it glows, gets hammered on the anvil, plunged into cold water, heated again. The heating doesn't destroy the metal, it removes impurities. The hammering doesn't break the metal, if it's good metal, of course, it shapes it. And this is a metaphor for our life experiences, right? The cold water doesn't weaken the metal, it tempers it, it balances it, right? Think of the eclipse as the forge, the molder, and you're the metal. So the fire tests whether you're solid or whether you're will break. And the good news is that you're solid. And this doesn't mean not having chaos and everything being perfect, but it's admitting your flaws and your strengths, right? And if you think of the breaking your fear, is actually tempering, balancing you, and you can become weapon grade expressor of self, lover of self, forgiver of self, balancing the self. So now I'm going to talk about more tools and practices to help you during this Ring of Fire eclipse, right, in Aquarius. So you can use black tourmaline, which I find that when I used to be into crystals, I still got it a very heavy crystal. So some of you, not heavy as in as in the weight, right, but as in powerful, right? So this can bring grounding whilst breaking patterns, protection during vulnerability. You can also use labradorite, and this can help you access ancestral wisdom. Pull it under your pillow, working with your guides and ancestors, seeing beyond the veil, the lies, the deceptions through, the social media lights, what your parents say, what your nation say you should be, through to what you believe. You can use aquamarine. This gives you the courage to speak truth. And the Aquarius water bearer energy works well with this for the throat chakra. For those who have been silent, so placing it on your throat can be good as well. Clear quartz, good for clear thinking, increasing, speeding up intention, clearing inherited fog, beliefs, and allowing you to see clearly and think more clearly, right? Amethyst can help you deepen your spiritual connection without bypassing grounded mysticism, right? So, as I said, sleep with them, carry them, meditate with them, grid with them, breathe with them, eat with them. Don't eat them though. They can support you. They don't do the work for you. So this is, whether we're talking tarot, tai chi, yoga, breathwork, meditation, any form of meditation, they are support. They don't do the work for us. We have to do the practical tools of, working through our emotional, psychological and spiritual trauma, balancing our physical health, right? Which leads to also balancing our financial health, which doesn't mean earning as much as you can, but, properly using what you've got, right? So talking about meditation, you can do a council visualization, sitting comfortably, closing your eyes, breathe, imagine a council of elders sitting in a circle. Some of you may recognize, or maybe it's your grandparents, great aunts, great uncles, whatever. Some of you won't recognize them because they're further back, right? But they're waiting for you. You approach. You sit, you say, I'm breaking the pattern, I need your support. Then listen, not with your mind, but with your body. What do you feel? Where? That's them responding. Do this daily during the eclipse and whenever you feel like it as well, right? Another ritual you can try is fire and water integration. So light a candle, that's the fire, the ring of the eclipse. This is what the candle represents during this ritual, right? Fill a bowl with water. So this represents the water bearing energy of Aquarius. Write the ancestral generational pattern dysfunction you want to break on paper, burn it in the candle flame, drop ashes in the water and say the pattern burns, the ashes dissolve, right? I am free whilst honouring where I come from and dispose of the water outside, returning to earth, right? That's what that symbolises. And repeat during the eclipse window or whenever you feel like you may need to do any of these rituals, right? You can also try some breath work for your nervous system. So box breathing, inhale 4 counts, hold for 4, exhale for 4, hold for 4, repeat for 5 minutes. This regulates your nervous system, which is processing generational material right now. And do this daily if you can, even if it's just for 10 seconds some days, right? In terms of sound healing, music as medicine, play your favourite music. I recommend Bob Marley's Redemption song. Its line, emancipate yourselves from mental slavery. Nothing but yourself can free your mind, right? That's this eclipse in one line, Redemption song, emancipate yourself, free yourself from mental slavery, right? And Peter Toss's Equal Rights and Justice. He says everyone is crying out for peace, none is crying out for justice. And the revolutionary who knows liberation requires both, justice and peace. So plays these songs during the eclipse season if you want, or any other song that you like, right? Let the frequency of music support your work, right? So now I'm going to talk about how this eclipse affects your relationships, right? So ultimately, relationships are being tested right now, right? As I said, not to destroy them, but to reveal what's real. If your relationship is built on performance, you performing who your partner needs or your friends or family need, and they're performing who you need in terms of your intimate relationships here specifically, this eclipse strips that away. You will see each other clearly. For some that's frightening, for others it's relief. Healthy relationships survive eclipse revelation. Toxic ones can't, sustain truth telling, and some of you may decide to let go or decide to go through conscious uncoupling. I think that's what it's called, right? And you may notice patterns of codependency coming up, such as I can't can't exist, I can't live, I can't be without you. Emotional unavailability, such as I love you but can't show it. Control, I need you to be who I need. People pleasing, I disappear to keep you. Name them, that's half the battle, and I can vouch for that. People pleasing is something I have to manage all the time. So yeah, so in terms of family dynamics, the pattern made visible, right, is, whatever that is for some of you. As I said, it's your mother's passive aggression coming out of your mouth. Maybe it's your father's emotional shutdown happening in your chest. Maybe it's your sibling dynamics repeating in your friendships, right? The patterns that you've been unconsciously repeating become conscious, right? And the eclipse say, see it. That's the gift. Awareness before behaviour change, right? The mayor of East Town's relationship with her daughter, resentment, distance, the grandbaby used as a weapon, that's unhealed mother wound playing out. The eclipse doesn't fix it immediately, but it makes it undeniable. You can't pretend anymore. From there, you can choose, repair or release. Both are valid, neither is easy. Because as I said, it can be really hard to let go, right? We love them, they're our family. Sometimes we wish people can be what we want, but ultimately when we are going into relationships, we have to train ourselves that it always has to be about what we think of these people, and we either be close to them or distance ourselves away from them based on that. And this is not to not meet their needs and not to be loyal and stuff like that, but as I said, when we're in the airplane, right, and the plane's going down, we put our own oxygen mask on too, right? And it's not selfish, because how can we serve others if we can't truly serve ourselves? And not in an egotistical way, but in a way that we take care of our emotional, psychological, spiritual, physical and financial needs, right? So in terms of chosen family, for those of you with children, family, friends, partners, maybe a queer family, anyone you choose instead of, the family you got born into, this eclipse tests these bonds too, but differently. Chosen family doesn't have the inherited dysfunction, but it may have projection or its own form of dysfunction in it, right? Like wanting them to be the family you didn't have. The eclipse asks, can you love them for who they actually are, not who you need them to be, right? So in terms of boundary work, the revolution requires, the change requires limits. So boundaries are how you keep your rhythm whilst allowing others to have their own rhythm, right? And then her Nista's lesson is, I can't make that family gathering, I need space, I'm not available for that kind of conversation right now, I love you and I'm taking a break from contact. These aren't mean, they're necessary. The relationships that can't handle your boundaries aren't relationships, they're investments, they're toxic in a way. Not severely toxic always, but if you can't be yourself, if you are codependent, then it's not healthy. So it's all about trying to make relationships healthy by having boundaries, right? And as I said, it's not about instant change, it's about making a plan to do this over the coming months and years, right? Slowly, you guessed it, does it, right? Yeah. So in terms of red flags to watch out for, so relationships that intensify quickly, love bombing, trauma bonding, we're so connected after 2 weeks, relationships demanding you to be smaller, so you can't talk about therapy, can't have boundaries, can't be yourself, relationships where you're doing all the work, or the apologizing, or the changing, or the trying. The eclipse reveals red flags you've been ignoring. Pay attention. So in terms of looking after your physical health and your lifestyle, so you can eat grounding foods during this eclipse season, such as root vegetables, carrots, potatoes, beets, protein, warm soups, anything heavy enough to ground this air sign intensity, right? Because it's in Aquarius, the moon and the sun, so stay hydrated. Because the Aquarius water bearer energy requires actual water. Limit caffeine. If you're anxious, you're already wild, can be through this energy, amped up. So don't add more fuel to the fire, right? Avoid heavy meals during the eclipse peak window, which is the 14th to the 20th of February. Your body's processing energy right now, not food, so just be careful. Of course eat what you need, but just be careful, take the right rest or a walk after dinner exercise, gentle exercise that is like a walk, right? Maybe some Tai Chi moves, yoga moves, gentle ones, right? Now I'm talking about what to avoid and why. So alcohol can intensify the effects of the eclipse. If you drink less. You don't have to give it up, just drink less. Your boundaries are thinner, your emotions are bigger, your decisions are more impulsive. So you may want to avoid processed foods if you're sensitive. Your body's working hard, don't make it work harder. Sugar crashes can feel worse than usual. High intensity exercise might be too much. Your nervous system is already activated, right? So in terms of sleep, you need more rest. You can need, some of you, more sleep than usual, as this, eclipse energy is knackering. It can burn us out, right? So nap if you can. Sleep in if possible. Go to bed earlier if you can, because your dreams can be more heavier right now. Support your dreams with actual sleep time, right? Physical activity, as I said, gentle movements like walking, yoga, dance, swimming, Tai Chi, anything that processes energy through the body without depleting and draining you. Saking practice, literally sake your body for 5 minutes, releases stuck energy, or anything else that does that. High intensity exercise if you feel wired, but know your limits are heavy weights, maybe running, rebounding, but remember, don't push through exhaustion. So in terms of self-reflection questions that can really just help you home in. I know I've mentioned some questions, but these questions are designed to provoke genuine reflection, not surface answers. So sit with them, journal, voice record, come back to these multiple times so you can ask yourself, what ancestral pattern am I most afraid of repeating? When I imagine being fully myself, who in my family would be disappointed? What revelation am I performing, aesthetic, inherited, versus what revolution is actually mine? Where am I waiting for permission that no one can give but myself? What would my healthy ancestors want for me that they couldn't have? If I broke this pattern, who would I lose? Am I willing to lose them? What does my actual rhythm feel like underneath the impulse tempo? So who am I really? What are my beliefs? What is my speed? You can also ask, where am I codependent with my family, friends or lovers, emotionally, financially, practically? What's the pattern beneath the pattern, the dysfunction underneath the obvious dysfunction? This may take a while for you to notice, but just sit with it and be gentle with yourself. Ask yourself, if I succeed at breaking this cycle, what changes for the next generation? What am I protecting by staying small, staying stuck, staying silent? Where am I most like my parents, and is this serving me or suffocating me, right? So in terms of the integration timeline, so we have the pre-eclipse phase, which is the 1st to the 14th of February, right? So themes that can start to come up, such as, noticing your dysfunction in your family, your dreams can be more intense, you can notice patterns that you couldn't see before. That's the preparation. Set intentions if this resonates. Solar eclipse energy, supports intention setting, but we must follow through with practical changes, but do them slowly. Journal, voice note, talk to your therapist, talk to someone you trust. The lightning doesn't have to strike yet, and it hasn't really struck yet, but the air can be electric during the 1st to the 14th of February, right? The eclipse window, right, peak intensity is the 14th to the 20th of February. The lightning strikes on the 17th of February at 12 p.m. GMT time, right? But the window is 3 days either side. So this is when, this is major crisis time for some of you, can bring major truths, revelations, key decisions can surface. You can be more impulsive and volatile. So don't make permanent decisions from temporary states unless absolutely necessary, So yeah, if you're willing to bear the consequences of blowing your house down completely and you feel like it's necessary, do it right. But do feel, process, cry, rage and move. Don't quit your job impulsively and relationships rashly. Make big financial moves from panic. The awareness comes now. The action can wait, right? Post-eclipse, so this is February to August 2026, 6 months. So themes can continue to unfold, your true self-expression, you acknowledging and working through your generational trauma and your psychological, emotional and spiritual baggage. Remember, this isn't a one-day event. Astrologically, spiritually, it's a 6-month process at least. So, in terms of trigger dates, we have the 17th of May, 3 months post the eclipse, the 17th of August. That's 6 months after the eclipse, right? And, you can experience yourself, having a bit of a time of it, but remember, if it feels like it, you're not going backwards. It's spiral integration, right? You may feel like you're moving 10 steps ahead and 100 steps back and then 200 steps ahead and 500 back. Well, it's spiral integration, Sometimes we have to learn certain lessons on the deeper levels, right, before we can truly move on from them. So each time you meet a theme, such as, I'm following my mother's passive aggressiveness, you'll meet it from a higher ground, a higher awareness, right? So this eclipse is part of a pair of eclipses, right? Because eclipses comes in twos. So the next eclipse is on the 3rd of March, right? And the entire 6-week span from early February through to mid-March is activated, so plan for sustained intensity due to the lunar eclipse on the 3rd of March. Don't see it as, there's going to be one peak and then we're done. No, it's like it's a 6-week period of intensity, and that will dwindle down, as time goes on, as we move into, April, May and June and stuff. But some of you may feel it deeper. It depends what's going on in your actual natal chart. I'm just giving you tips on how to work with this, energy, although I am going to give guidance for all 12 sun, moon and rising sign in a while, right? So I'm going to talk about the solar cycle, which is an 18.5 year pattern is. So if we look back to 2007, February, March, what was happening in your life, similar themes can be sort of coming up or completing now. What did you start breaking then? Think about it, because that's what you're finishing now. What couldn't you see clearly then? You can be seeing it now. The spiral of the circle goes upward, backwards, downwards and back again, right? So remember, you're not repeating, you're completing, right? So some of you are ready to act immediately. Trust that. Others need processing time. These are both equally valid, right? The sadder question is, are you waiting for genuine integration or avoiding what you need to face, right? And want to face, right? Only you know. Be honest. Neither rushing, rushing to change things, that's a trauma response, nor avoiding, that's a fear response, right? Will serve you right now. Find your timing, your pace. Remember the Nisa Nakshatra lesson, right rhythm, right timing. So now I'm going to talk about zodiac guidance for all of the 12 sun, moon and rising signs. So this guidance interprets where the eclipse is activating the different areas of your chart based on your moon, rising and sun sign. This isn't a reading of your natal chart, it's showing how the eclipse interacts with the 12 houses and signs of the chart, and obviously the houses where your moon, sun and rising, which is the first house, right? I mean, so you can read your rising sign first. This is how the eclipse affects your life directly. But if you know your sun sign and not rising, read that instead. And you know, guys, if you're proper curious, read all three. Your sun sign, this is how it affects your identity. And the moon sign is how it affects your emotions. And sometimes, you know, reading all three, we can find the overlaps, and that's where the real work lives, right? With working with your mind, body and soul, right? Your moon, rising and your sun. And some of you may have transits happening that deepens this eclipse for you as well. So this is just a base reading. So anyway, for Aries, sun, moon and rising, this eclipse lands in your 11th house of friends, community, groups, hope for the future. And if we take in, you know, the moon in Aquarius as the first house, right, because it's in Aquarius, and then we go clockwise, this is why it's landing in your 11th house. I hope that makes sense, because it's in the second house of Capricorn, the third house of Sagittarius, and going backwards. I hope that makes sense. So yeah, so for Aries rising, this eclipse lands in your 11th house of friends, community, groups, hopes for the future. The revolution is in your social circle, but the question you can be asking right now, who's actually your people? Who are you keeping around out of habit, comfort zone friendships, toxic friendships, right? And the generational pattern here is staying in groups because you're supposed to, not because they feed your soul. And this eclipse says, find your actual tribe. Aquarius is your natural 11th house if you've got Aries in the first house, that is as well, because you can have sun or moon in Aries and it's in your 4th or 5th houses, right? So this is for people who have Aries rising. That Aquarius is naturally usually in your 11th house, but sometimes you have intercepted signs, which just basically means you can not have Aquarius at all in your chart. But anyway, that means any planets. You always have the 11th house, right? But just planets in, or house cuffs of the that's the border between the houses in your sign as well. So anyway, Aries, Aquarius energy says you're meant to innovate and have a, you know, a forward thinking, weird, authentic community. But some of you are in basic groups, playing small to fit. So Aries energy is like Aquarius energy. It's the first sign where it's all about starting things. Sometimes you guys can have, you know, trouble with finishing things, but it's cardinal energy, right? Cardinal fire energy. So, you know, your purpose is kind of like at least saying things, and you know, sometimes to speak in your mind as well, which sometimes, you know, can get you into trouble, but that's sort of like your energy. Obviously, if you've got, you know, the sun in Aries making a trine to Saturn, you're going to be different from someone who doesn't have that. You know, you may not be more outspoken if you've got Saturn grounding your Aries sun, right? But anyway, you will find your breakthrough in working with others, but the community you work with has to be your kind of, you know, revolutionary energy who are not performing for aesthetics and lights, right? So yeah, find your tribe basically, and trust your knowing. You will know your people when you meet them. They will see you and you will see them, and there'll be no performance required. And you know, it's activating authentic relationships for you, Aries, sun, moon and rising basically. Okay, so for Taurus, this eclipse hits your 10th house of career, calling, public life and what you're known for, right? So the generational pattern here can be working yourself to death, security through grinding, never resting, working to burnout, right? So think of your grandfather maybe who worked the factory until his body gave out, your mother who worked 2 jobs to keep you housed, and now you're repeating reading, yeah? This eclipse says wealth through alignment, which is represented by the Nakshatra that I talked about earlier, not wealth through suffering, right? Your calling wants you rested, not knackered, not burnt out. The revolution is redefining success, not your parents' version, sacrifice everything, not society's version, climb to the never ending top, right? But your version. Maybe success is a 4-day work week and financial security for you. Maybe success is less money and more time. Only you know, but the 10th house eclipse makes it public. Whatever you decide, people will see. That's the test. Can you redefine success out loud? Can you disappoint expectations publicly? And, you know, this is what this eclipse, your calling as well, is, you know, calling your attention to. The ancestors want you to rest. Do it for them. If you can't and won't, do it for yourself, right? So rest and a bit more fun for you guys, hey Taurus. So for Gemini, Sun, Moon and Rising, this eclipse activates your 9th house of beliefs, higher education, travel, philosophy and searching for meaning. So the generational pattern that comes up here is inherited beliefs that you've never questioned, such as your family's religion or lack of religion, atheism, your family politics, your family's this is how things are, or, you know, way of doing things. And this eclipse says, what do you actually believe? Not what you were taught, what feels true now. The revolution is philosophical, the breakthrough is intellectual, but mind you, some of you are already in rebellion against family beliefs, and that rebellion has its own sort of dogma, you know, just rebelling for the sake of it, right? This eclipse asks, are you for something or just against what you were given, you know? So you're like, oh, I don't believe in the religion that my family follow because they're followers, so it has to be bad. Have you actually done your own research into any philosophy, religion, intellectual or other beliefs that your family have, right? So it's a reminder for you, Gemini, that true belief is chosen consciously, not default position or reactive opposition, you know. So travel, physical or mental, you know, supports this work. Get out of your familiar, your comfort zone, right? Read books, listen to podcasts, YouTube channels, whatever, outside of your usual. Talk to people who think differently, expand, grow. That's your Jupiter ruled nature. The 9th house eclipse reminds you, the search for meaning is never finished. Keep searching, keep questioning, keep expanding, keep growing, you know. So for Cancer, Sun, Moon and Rising, this eclipse lands in your 8th house of search, death, shared resources, transformation, other people's money, psychological depth. It's proper intense energy, you know, because Scorpio normally lives here, right, with Pluto and Mars, depending on what system you believe in, right? So the ancestral pattern here is secrets, keeping the family sick, right? The things that no one talks about, the things that we hide, right? The abuse, the addiction, the dysfunction, everybody knows about but no one names. And this eclipse drags it into the light, or it wants you to do that, right? And for some of you, it's not gently, right? It's chaotic the way it does it. The 8th house doesn't do gentle, right? Pluto doesn't. It transforms. That's its purpose, to get us outside of our comfort zone. Sometimes it's harsh. Sometimes it takes away the people we love and the things we love, right? So shared resources are coming under the spotlight, right? So you may ask yourself, who's financially supporting you in ways that create resentment, or who are you financially supporting in ways that create resentment? Are you supporting your parents? Are they supporting you? Is money being used as control? The revolution here, the lesson here is speaking the unspeakable, naming the secret, facing the shadow. That's terrifying for Cancer. You want everyone and everything safe, together, no conflict in general, right? But The safety you've been maintaining is false. The togetherness is immeasurement. It's codependency, right? This eclipse says real safety comes through truth telling, not secret keeping. Therapy is essential here. You need support to face this, so this could be committing to working through your emotional, psychological and spiritual trauma on your own, reaching out to a helpline such as the Samaritans in the UK, or traditional therapy, right? In general, you can't do 8th house work alone. Well, you can, but get help, whether it be through a natural therapist or listening to podcasts, reading books, whatever. There's different ways that you can help yourself, and some of you can do it alone, some of you will reach out for support, and neither way is wrong, right? Working with your shadow, doing it alone, working with your flaws and your strengths and all your different personality traits, right? Ultimately, your ancestors, spirit guides want the secret out. They died with it, don't die with it too, is the message. So for Leo, this eclipse hits your 7th house of partnerships, marriage, one-on-one relationships and open enemies. The generational pattern here is losing yourself in a relationship to be loved, performing what your partner needs to, needs from you so they stay. Maybe your mother did it, maybe your grandmother did it, maybe your father or other family member did it, right? Now you're doing it. So this eclipse is saying, can you be yourself and partnered? Can you be authentic and loved? Leo needs to be seen, and the 7th house eclipse says, I see you, but does your partner see you? Are they in love with the real you or performance? Or if you're single, do people see you, for who you are? The growth, the revolution here is authentic relating, being authentic in the way that you communicate with yourself and others. No more shape-shifting, no more performing. Show up as you actually are. And I know this can be scary because people can reject us and abandon us and stuff like that, and we've got trauma bonds and toxic bonds going on. So be gentle with yourself, do it slowly. If people leave, they weren't your person or people anyway. If they stay, the relationship that stays, whether it's intimate or friendship, if you're single, will deepen. Either way, you win. You stop living a lie. Mind you, some of you are single, as I said, and this eclipse can bring someone new also, but only if you've done the work of, knowing who you actually are. The right person doesn't want you to be small. They want you to be full lion. So, roar. Leo, the ancestors are tired of watching you dim your light for people who don't deserve you, right? And deserve you doing so, which is nobody really, we shouldn't be dimming our light, we should be, yes, respecting other people's boundaries, allowing them to shine too, but we shouldn't stop our shine. So for Virgo, this eclipse activates your 6th house of daily work, health, service, routines, employees if you have them. So the generational pattern here is perfectionism killing you slowly, your worth being tied to productivity, your value measured by how much you give, service as self-abandonment. This eclipse says good enough is revolutionary for you, done is better than perfect. Your health, physical or mental, is worth more than your output. The energy of the Nisa in your 6th house, the Nakshatra, right, is telling you to find your actual rhythm in your daily life, not the grind, not the hustle, not the burnout, but your rhythm. Maybe that's 4 hours deep work and rest of the day it's gentle work. Maybe that's 3 days intense work and 2 days rest. Whatever it is, honour it. The revolution is resting without guilt, saying no without justification, making your body a priority over your to-do list, and remembering that service, is holy. Self-sacrifice is dysfunction. Learn the difference. The ancestors work themselves to death, don't. That's not honouring them. Living is honouring them, and taking rest is honouring them, right? So for Libra, Sun, Moon and Rising, this eclipse hits your 5th house of creativity, romance, children, play, joy and self-expression. So the ancestral pattern here is performing joy whilst being hollow, feeling nothing, being numb inside. So relationships, romantic or otherwise, where you've been the peacekeeper, the harmonizer, the one who makes it work by disappearing. This eclipse says, what do you actually want? Not what keeps the peace, what lights you up. The 5th house is your creativity, your play, your authentic expression, right? When's the last time you created something just because? When's the last time you played without purpose? The revolution is choosing yourself in romance, having a relationship with yourself as well, or if you with someone, you know, not being codependent and merging together in codependency, not people pleasing your way into love, authentic desire, authentic expression. If you have kids, this eclipse affects them too. Are they free to be themselves, or are they performing for your approval? Break the cycle, you know, let them break the cycle. You know, if you have kids, let them be weird, let yourself be weird. The ancestors people pleased their way through life and died with their song unsung. You know, walk to the beat of your own drum, sing your own song, paint it, dance it, live it. No more harmony at the cost of authenticity for you guys with Libra energy, right? For Scorpio, you know, this eclipse lands in your 4th house of home, family, roots, private life and emotional foundation, right? Your emotional routine or lack of emotional awareness, right? So this eclipse is proper deep for you. The 4th house is where you come from. The ancestral pattern is the foundation, you know, what you learn at the very beginning of when you was born, right? And this eclipse says, what foundation are you building your life on? Is it solid, or is it your family's dysfunction? Some of you are literally moving house because the 4th house rules property, as well as end of life care and all of that. Others are emotionally moving out of family patterns while staying, you know, in the same location, in terms of, you know, geographically. So the revolution is creating a home that's yours, not recreating your childhood home, the dysfunction, the tension, the unspoken rules, but your home, your sanctuary, where you can fully be yourself from within yourself, you know, dealing with your psychological and emotional, spiritual trauma, continuing that work, learning to balance and accept yourself for where you are at your journey as you move forward into newness, right? But accepting where you're at every stage of your journey, reminding yourself it's a journey, not a destination, you know, creating that sanctuary where you can fully be yourself. If you're living with family still, this eclipse might be the push to leave if you can, and I know it can be difficult nowadays with finances and stuff. If you're not living with family, it's examining what home means to you, you know, looking at that. The ancestors want you to be rooted in something real, you know, not trauma, not dysfunction, actual safety. Build that, even if you have to build it alone first, right? For Sagittarius, this eclipse activates your 3rd house of communication, siblings, learning, local environment, how you think and speak, and the generational ancestral pattern here is staying silent about what you actually think to keep the peace. Your voice, your truth, your knowing, silenced. This eclipse says speak. The 3rd house is where your voice lives. The revolution is using it, not recklessly, strategically. You know, Palace is part of this eclipse. After all, bringing that strategic thinking and wisdom, you know, being consistent in what you're saying, like, I disagree, that doesn't work for me, here's what I actually think. If you have siblings, dynamics can change there as well. The roles you played, such as the responsible one, the black sheep, the mediator, you know, the peacekeeper, are all up for renegotiation. You don't have to stay in childhood roles, you know. Learning is highlighted too, for you guys, Sagittarius, in this eclipse. What do you need to learn to support your revolution, your growth, right? New skills, new knowledge, get curious. The ancestors want you to be educated, informed, and speak the truth. They were silenced, you don't have to be. So for Capricorn rising, this eclipse hits your second house of money, values, self-worth, resources, what you own, and the ancestral pattern here is having your sense of self, your worth tied to being productive, security through suffering, poverty consciousness even when you have enough. Maybe your family survived through scarcity, they taught you scarcity thinking, thinking of lack. And this doesn't mean, if you don't have it, you don't have it, right? But the eclipse is wanting to take you out of survival mode, saying that this isn't survival mode anymore. Abundance is available, and this is just not about money and material things, about abundance of, having emotional, psychological and spiritual health and wealth, right? But you have to let yourself have it. And of course, if you want material wealth, we've all got a different, we should have a different expectation of what that means to us. For some of you, it's being a millionaire. For some of you, it's having enough to eat nice food once a month or whatever, and working towards that, not thinking about what others have, but thinking about what financial and other security means to you, right? So yeah, this eclipse is reminding you, Capricorn, that abundance is available, but you have to let yourself have it. And the revolution comes, the growth comes through redefining worth, not through output, through being. You're valuable because you exist, not because you produce. Money is just energy, it flows. The grip, Capricorn's natural ability actually blocks flow, loosen the grip, loosen what you think abundance is. For some of you, maybe overworking, and you may have to do that, because the cost of living and all of that. This is not what it's about. It's about being strategic, looking at your spending, cutting corners when need be, using your money more strategically, and then again, I know it can be hard because, sometimes you just don't have enough to make ends meet and all the rest of it, right? But Denisa in your second says wealth through alignment, right? Through timing, through being in rhythm, not through grinding and overworking and burnout, trust that. And it wants you to also look at your values as well. What do you actually value? Not what you should value, what lights you up. Invest there. The ancestors want you to be secure, but security through alignment, not security through suffering, right? So we have to remember that. And again, I know where things are strained financially in a lot of areas across the world. So I know that, we have to be realistic with that as well. But also, it's about not being secure through your suffering as well, but getting there through alignment for you, Capricorn. Aquarius, this eclipse is in your first house of identity, body, how you show up, your immediate impact on others. This is your eclipse, the most personal, right? The revolution is you. The generational pattern here that you're wanting to break is being unique whilst performing uniqueness, right? Rebel, ascetic, just dressing like someone who rebels or saying the words, without actually living it, right? Without rebellion. This eclipse strips that. Who are you under the performance, under the I am so different, what's real? The first house eclipse recreates you literally, wanting to sift, change your identity, your body image or your body itself might change. You may decide to lose weight, change your hair, how you dress, whatever, and your presence can definitely change. You can become someone new over the next 6 months, from February to August until the next solar eclipse, right? Let it happen. Don't cling to the old identity. The person you were served their purpose. This version is bigger. The ancestors are backing you. They're the council. You're the young leader. Work together, implement, start what they wanted but couldn't have, or start what you want to start as well, because it's not just about blindly following ancestors as well. Maybe your family pattern was that. It's about, finding what freedom means to you and authenticity means to you and living it. True revolution, true change, not inherited rebellion. This is your moment, so use it, right? So for Pisces, this eclipse lands in your 12th house, right? The unconscious, hidden enemies, self-undoing, spirituality, isolation, what you can't see about yourself, you know. And this is the most subtle placement. The revolution, the change is eternal and external from within, right, for you guys. The generational pattern is escaping through fantasy, numbing through substances or disassociation, you know, sacrificing yourself for others and calling it holy, you know, religious or spirituality. This eclipse says, come back to your body, be here now. The 12th house work is shadow work, dream work, therapy work, and all the internal processing. You might need more alone time during this eclipse season, during this year of 2026. That's not avoidance, that's necessary integration. But the distinction here is, are you alone to process or alone to escape what you need to process, right? Only you know. Be honest. Spirituality is your natural mode, typically with Pisces energy, especially if you've got Pisces moon, right? But this eclipse asks, is your spirituality grounded, or is it bypassing, you know, you use it to escape for your life, right? Do you have practices that connect you to something larger whilst keeping you in your body? If not, find them. The ancestors want you free, but free means present, not disassociated, right? Boundaries are love. Stay in your body, do the work. The liberation is through presence, not through escape, right? So now I'm just going to talk about energy management for everyone, right? Some of you may be highly sensitive people, so this eclipse season can be overwhelming. Everyone's energy is sort of like increased, right? You're picking up an ancestral material from people around you, especially if you're more sensitive and empathetic, right? So, you know, remember to protect yourself, and protection isn't about putting up walls, it's about filters. Visualize you have a filter around you that lets love through but blocks dysfunction, right? You know, other people's anxiety isn't yours to carry, their anger isn't yours to process. Discernment, using your judgment, learning when to say no. In terms of energy boundaries is important, you know, such as I can't make that, I need space, that doesn't work for me. No justification required, you know, just saying no. Having boundaries, this eclipse season wants us to practice boundaries no matter what star sign you are, right? So remember that no is a complete sentence. The people who respect boundaries will stay. The people who don't have problems anyway. Social media, you know, take breaks if you need to of anything, you know, socializing, partying, drinking, overindulging, whatever. Your nervous system doesn't, you know, distinguish tell the difference between online conflict and in-person conflict, you know, so just take breaks, basically. That's the point here. Protect your inputs, right? Protect what you're consuming and viewing and talking about and being around. So in terms of, you know, managing your sensitivity this eclipse, there can be increased in physical symptoms like headaches, exhaustion, insomnia, you know, not sleeping enough, digestive issues and muscle tension. These are your body's processing energy. Support it, rest, you know, drink enough water, hydrate, gentle movement, tai chi, yoga, whatever. Nervous system regulation, breath work, cold water, shaking, whatever. Think about, you know, what you're feeling in terms of increasing headaches. Is it just down to an eclipse, the eclipse, right? Or when to see a doctor? If symptoms are new, severe or scary, you know, see a doctor. If they're just intensified versions of your usual, it's probably the eclipse. Trust your knowing. But, you know, I would say, you know, if you're unsure, go and get medical help either way, because it's better to be safe than sorry. So in terms of when to rest and when to engage with others, trust your body. Some days require withdrawal, you know, honor that. Other days require action, honor that too. There's no universal prescription. You're learning your own rhythm. Some of you will feel energized during the eclipse. You know, the lightning can charge you, make you motivated to change, right, and do the things that you need to do. Others will feel depleted as their intensity can drain you. Both are fine. Neither is better. Know yourself, responding accordingly, you know, so do things, motivate yourself, complete goals, make goals if you can, or rest. Both are needed, right? Listen to your body. That's the key message. So in terms of self-care as resistance, rest during this eclipse can be radical, right? That demands productivity at the moment, boundaries can be revolutionary in a culture that demands consistent availability, taking care of yourself whilst breaking generational patterns isn't selfish, it's survival. The work is hard enough. Don't make it harder by also judging yourself for needing support. You're allowed to need help, you're allowed to rest, you're allowed to say no. That's not a weakness, that's wisdom. So in conclusion, this Ring of Fire eclipse asks 3 things. Break the ancestral, the generational curses and patterns that are toxic. That's the change, that's the revolution. Receive ancestral support, that's the counsel backing you. Find your actual rhythm, that's the Nisa's and that Sakra's lesson through fire, learning through heartbreak and rejection and abandonment. Not 1 or 2 or 3. The breakthrough happens at their intersection. The young leader, which is you, needs the council. The council needs the young leader to implement, to start what they couldn't and follow through. Your revolution honors them whilst freeing yourself. That's the integration, not rejection. Synthesis, bringing it together. So during the crisis moments over the next 6 months, and there will be crisis moments, that's how eclipse and astrological energy and life works, right? Remember, the discomfort is the breakthrough. The panic is your nervous system catching up to the growth your soul already has chose, right? The fear is essential, generational, not current. This energy that the eclipse is bringing to our attention. Of course, it's your own as well. We all have our own psychological, emotional trauma, but it's been amplified through the generational patterns, right? So remember, you're not in danger. You may feel overwhelmed, but remember, you're in transformation. Breathe, feel, move forward anyway, even though it is scary to get outside of our comfort zones, right? You're not broken. You're responding to a broken system by becoming the one who stops passing it down. That sacred work. It's also, knackering, tiring, can lead to burnout, but this is why you need to rest and do the self-care talked about, right? And although it's knackering, do the work anyway. The ancestors are cheering you on. Your higher self wants to be authentic, right? Wants you to step into your authenticity, to be aware of who you already are. The healthy ones, ancestors, people want you free more than you can want yourself free at times. Your ancestors die trapped. Don't die trapped too. The difficulty doesn't mean you're doing it wrong. You're the first one, maybe for a lot of you in your bloodline, to attempt consciousness on a day-to-day 24/7 basis, right? Of course it's hard. There's no map. Your ancestors survived through denial. You're learning, and this eclipse wants you to survive through awareness, and this is a completely different skill set, right? You're learning it now. You're allowed to be clumsy. You're allowed to backslide, make mistakes. Remember what I said, sometimes it can be 100 steps forward, 500 back, then 1 step forward, 300 back, right? Allow yourself to backslide, and to, it's about getting up after each failure, right? And going forward, right? You're allowed to need support as well. Just keep moving, one small choice at a time. That's how patterns break, day-to-day changes. Remember, compound interest, right? So 6 months from now, so August 2026, look back at this moment. You won't recognize yourself, for some of you, not because you're someone else, but because you're more yourself than you've ever been, right? You're dropping the performance. Your authenticity is getting more and more stronger day to day. The rhythm finds its true beat. Your self-expression finds its true beat. That's what the eclipse wants you to build towards, right? Trust the process, trust yourself, trust the ancestors who want you free, trust the parts of you that want you free. You have all you need within, and by using the tools we have in the world in a constructive, positive way, whether that be the internet, podcast, books, whatever, you have all what's needed. And yeah, you know, money and stuff can be tight, but we're talking outside of money, you know, in terms of, you know, finding your way to bring balance to your emotional, spiritual, physical and psychological life, you know. So yeah, go you. And if you've listened to this, thank you so much. And if you like my content, follow, because I'm going to be working through natal Venus and doing a lot more you know, natal astrology this year as well. And for those who have listened to me from the beginning, thank you guys for supporting me and subscribing to me. So I'm Imani, your holistic astrological karmic life coach, and it's been my pleasure to talk about this ring of fire solar eclipse, yeah, that's it, in Aquarius, February the 17th 2026. Take care and see you next time.